was your A1 last night?
The big TV had hockey.
So you had 2 TVs going?
Well, I had the baseball game on my phone, so I could just kind of keep up with it. But I was pretty much focused on the hockey.
That's what I was. And then I went, during intermission, I'd go back to baseball, and then I turned baseball off when A&M had runners, had the tying run at the plate in the 8th inning, and they didn't score. And UT put that kid in there that looked like Kenny Powers or Rod Beck. I was like, up there, A&M blew it, and I turned the game off, and I watched hockey, and I was actually shocked to see that A&M made a comeback in the 9th inning. I was like, I'm just going to be completely honest with everybody out there. But I said to start this with Ian, I said, can you believe it that the Vols won the national championship? Ian says yes. Well, they have a good team. Oh, yeah. I'll admit, I picked the Vols yesterday to win. I thought Tennessee was going to win, just analytically, making a decision here or there. I thought Tennessee was going to win. But there's still a part of me that can't believe that the Vols actually won a meaningful national championship. I saw Joe write in his story that in 2009 they won an indoor track and field championship. The Big Four: basketball, football, women's basketball, baseball. And yes, we know it goes football 1, basketball 2, men's basketball 2. Women's basketball and baseball are kind of tied 3 and 4. Ian, if you had to
Good question. Probably baseball.
See, I think,
But we're splitting hairs here.
Right. Me, I'm obviously women's basketball guy, but, it's to that point, I think we can all agree, right? Football, men's basketball, and then baseball and women's basketball together. Joe called them in his column today, the revenue sports or something like that. Women's basketball and baseball don't make any money, especially given how much money they're going to have to pay Tony Vitello. But it still counts. It's still a championship. Because even though it's not a football championship or a men's basketball championship, it is one of the 4 major college championships. And as every Tennessee fan will tell you, Tennessee over the years has been absolutely prone to choking these games away over the years. Just prone to choking. And that includes Vitello. And that includes the Tennessee baseball team. And the Vols have always seemed to have a little bit of a tight ass, even Vol baseball, in the big moments. It felt like the 2022 series against Notre Dame. Felt like the pressure of being number 1 in this unbelievable, unbeatable team, according to the Robbie and Rexroad program. This unbeatable team, it felt like it weighed on them. And the fans just thought they were destined to win a championship, and they were stunned when they didn't even get out of the Super Regional. Even against Evansville in the Supers, it felt to me like Tennessee baseball was gripping the sticks a little too tight. Felt that way in the first game against Florida State, that they got bailed out of by our third base umpire over there that was too afraid to call a check swing. And it even kind of felt that way in game 1 when the Vols couldn't play defense against A&M. But from the moment that Dylan Dreiling hit that home run in game 2, and I know he hit the big home run last night as well, but from the moment that Dreiling hit that home run on Sunday, it felt to me like A&M and not the Vols were the team that was more likely to poop the championship away. The Vols got good fortune along the way. They got the check swing against Florida State, which absolutely was a swing and should have been called as such, and Tennessee would have lost the first game, and they probably would not have made it to the national championship. It's just reality. A&M had some injuries, but guess what? Everybody needs good fortune along the way. Patrick Mahomes has won 2 Super Bowls. He won a Super Bowl because Jimmy Garoppolo missed a wide-open Emmanuel Sanders in the end zone. And then, you go back to that Super Bowl against the Eagles with that phantom holding call, or the championship game against the Bengals where they called the guy for late hitting Mahomes out of bounds to set up the game-winning field goal. Even Mahomes needs good luck. Tom Brady needed good luck. He didn't intercept that pass at the goal line that Malcolm Butler did against the Seahawks. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, hey, Tennessee got lucky or no. But for a school, and it's not just a baseball program, but it is the University of Tennessee, for a school that this century just seems to struggle every time they get close, to the point that it is truly painful. I'm not even a Vol fan, and I watched that South Carolina football game 2 years ago, and I'm like, oh, God, these Vol fans, they finally beat Alabama. They finally get excited. They're going to make the playoff, and they blow it to South Carolina, and the star quarterback tears his ACL. Given the history, the Rick Barnes tournament choke jobs, again, even some of Vitello's missteps over the years with those great teams, it was nice to see Tennessee pull it out. And it was nice to see the fans have that moment. You know, again, I said this yesterday, and I'm not knocking a baseball championship. I would love for Louisville to win a baseball championship. Just like I would love for Louisville to win a women's basketball. But I would love for Louisville to win a baseball championship. They said yesterday, you know, most people don't really care. A&M fans cared. Vol fans cared. Vandy fans cared. We'll get to them in a second. But I just think about the Tennessee fan base. I've told the story growing up a Vanderbilt fan, how, you know, I always say this, that if you're a Georgia fan and it's like, my daddy was a Bulldog fan and my granddaddy was a Bulldog fan, and every Saturday we watched the Dogs. And like, if you grew up a Vanderbilt fan like me, you watch UT every week, hope they'd lose. But I think about the grandpas that remember Johnny Majors and Phil Fulmer winning national titles, that have 25 or 30-year-old sons that are now having their own children. And they could watch the game last night, and they could rejoice and celebrate the one time that it feels like Tennessee truly won the championship in those lifetimes for those kids, and it was last night. It was last night. That's the first time. Again, you're a grandfather. You've got a 12-year-old son. Your 12-year-old son loves the Vols. He probably never watched Pat Summitt coach. I mean, think about that. And so I think it's great. And there's a second part of this too, which is it's nice for a school like Tennessee to win the championship, because it does mean more to those fans and that university than, say, Wake Forest or NC State or other schools. I'm not going to say it means more to Tennessee than it does to LSU, because I don't really know, the scope of how much LSU fans care about baseball. I know that they sell out that stadium all the time and it's massive. But it does matter to me when a school like Tennessee wins, and it obviously is important to the fans. I mean, I think the reason that Tennessee has gotten so much better at all sports during the NIL and transfer portal era is because the Tennessee fans put their money where their mouth is. Tennessee had the best team in this tournament. Tennessee has the best coach in this tournament. Tennessee has the best fans in this tournament. And while life is never about what you deserve, as much as it should be, as much as we look at it and say, we deserved better, or he deserved a better fate, or that's unfair to them, while the results of life, especially in sports, I'm not going to say are never about what somebody deserves. For the most part, they're not. But Tennessee, their fans, their coach, that team, they deserve the title. They didn't back down. I really thought that they might melt down when Jace Laviolette hit that home run on Sunday to begin the game. They get smoked in game one. Laviolette hits the homer to begin game two. I'm like, oh boy, Tennessee's in trouble. But they didn't. Drew Beam was fantastic on the mound in game two, gave him a chance. Yesterday, they go 1-2-3 the first inning, and immediately Christian Moore hits the home run. Tennessee was relentless. And again, for a school that I was probably a little worried about with the coach, I was a little worried about them getting a little too tight. I was worried about them blowing it. I think it was more A&M that played too tight, that couldn't get the big hit with runners in scoring position in the eighth inning, couldn't get the big hit. They were 10 feet short in game two. Congratulations to Tennessee. Congratulations to their fans, because this is a moment that, again, even though it's not a football championship, and no one's claiming it was a football championship, but even though it's not a football championship, it is something that if you are a diehard Tennessee fan, you can be proud of your school, you can be proud of your team, you can be proud of your coach, you can be proud of the fact that you are a Tennessee Vol fan and that you can celebrate with your family, whether it's your dad who is a Vol fan that made you a Vol fan, whether it's your son or daughter who's a Vol fan who you watch the games with every Saturday. You have that moment. And it's good that Tennessee finally got a moment this century since Pat Summitt. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Every dog has its day. And yesterday was Smokey's. Congratulations. 615-737-1025. So I think there may be a little something coming down the pipe here in a second, which we'll keep our eyes on. So we'll do that. We'll keep our eyes on that. And then there's something I said was going to happen yesterday if Tennessee won, and it did, and it is what it is. You can complain about it, but it is what it is, and we'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Hard to center yourself, which is a good thing, being lost in the moment, I guess. Nothing too intelligent to say other than the first thing to say is I hope the fans that have turned this into an insane party, an insane event, got the series that they wanted and that they deserved. It clearly could have been either team's trophy tonight, so congrats to Texas A&M. I mean, you cross paths with players in Hoover and just on the field. And in particular, some of their mainstays are just incredibly cool guys. And then also, I was given an opportunity to experience something different than University of Missouri. So I owe, a thank you to the head coach of Texas A&M, who did a phenomenal job and made an incredible hire this year too. So congrats to Coach Schlossnagle and Texas A&M and their fans that have always kind of blown my mind ever since I was at Missouri. We went to a football game there, and it was unbelievable. Everybody was pretty friendly till Brad Smith did his thing, but Texas A&M's definitely won their fair share of football games. So enough rambling. No better team to win for University of Tennessee than a bunch of guys that were truly the definition of a team, and no better play for our program to, I think, be the winning run on that slide. A guy that's just built with a ton of grit, and his teammates follow his leadership, and it's a great example of how this group got things done.
Okay, there you go. That was Tony Vitello after they won the championship yesterday. Congratulations to Tennessee, to Vitello, the university, and the fans and the players. And I said this yesterday. If Tennessee won last night, they would pass Vanderbilt as the better program. Who's got the better all-time program? I'm not talking about the last 20 years since Tim Corbin made Vanderbilt a national power. But the better all-time program, it's Tennessee. Who's got the better head-to-head record recently? It's Tennessee. Who's got more success recently with 3 trips to the College World Series over the last 4 years? And the year they didn't make it was the year they were the best team in the country, probably was their best top-to-bottom team. Tennessee. Who has the better head coach right now in today's NIL era? It's Tennessee. And no disrespect to Tim Corbin, but it took Tim Corbin, I think he got there in like 2002, and it took Tim Corbin about 11 years to win a national title, 10, 11 years. Tony Vitello is taking him 5. I mean, by almost every metric, Vitello's a better coach or has accomplished more faster than Corbin did. I mean, so to me, now look, the just total sheer number of titles isn't the determining factor between who has a better program. I know that some people will say, oh, we've got a better program because we've got X amount of titles, or it's everything all together, right? It's the titles, it's the tradition, it's the fan base, it's the current state of affairs, it's all of it. And to me right now, Tennessee checks more boxes than Vanderbilt does. Tennessee is now the better program in the state. And I think it's great that you'd have to say Tennessee is the undisputed top state in college baseball between UT and Vandy. Growing up for me, it was California. California, Stanford was always good, winning national titles. UCLA, Fullerton was really, really good. Pryor and Barry Zito were at USC when I was a kid. Then Texas was really, really good as a state. UT had Augie over there. They won a bunch of titles. TCU's been good with Schlossnagle, the guy that was coaching A&M. Texas Tech's been in the College World Series. Obviously, A&M. Florida's had Florida State, Florida. Miami's been good at times, although they haven't been very good recently. But right now, I think the best state of college baseball is Tennessee. But Vandy fans aren't going to like that. Because Vandy fans, baseball is the one thing that really belonged to Vanderbilt. That really, truly belonged to Vandy. It was like, look, we know we're not good at football. We know that we're not traditionally as good, especially since Rick Barnes got to UT at basketball. But we've got baseball. And you don't have baseball anymore. Now, here's the question. I said to Ian yesterday, I go, you think Tim Corbin's watching the game? You think Tim Corbin is thinking about, man, if UT wins the title, they're going to be the top team in the state, and I'm not only having to recruit against that, but my fans are going to be very unhappy about the fact that we really have truly been displaced as the top program in the state and everything else. And Ian thinks Tim Corbin's above all that. And maybe he is. But I do wonder if you're Tim Corbin, if you're starting to feel the heat of UT and starting to feel the anger of the fans, the jealousy that it's UT now that's the top team in the state. And I wonder if you're Tim Corbin. Now, look, he's already made some massive changes. Fired the hitting coach, brought in 2 guys, including a guy who was a head coach. I mean, they've spent money now on the coaching staff. And he said after they lost in the regional to High Point, he said, we're going to have to look in the mirror, starting with me. And then obviously he went out and made some moves on the coaching staff, and we'll see. I don't know, exactly what they're doing recruiting-wise, but I wonder, does Tennessee's victory ignite a fire inside of Tim Corbin to get that fastball back and to maybe change his ways a little bit and to get Vanderbilt back on top? Because even though right now Tennessee, in my opinion, has pulled ahead of Vanderbilt, that doesn't mean that Vandy can't look at what happened yesterday and say, okay, now it's our turn. Because let's say Vanderbilt goes and wins a championship next year, which I don't think is very likely, but let's say they do. Look, Tim Corbin's a great coach, an all-time great coach. I don't know if Corbin still has the ability to be great in today's game. Just like I don't think Calipari has the ability to be great in today's game in basketball. But maybe I'm wrong. And if Tim Corbin still got the heater, and this is what ignites him and ignites their program and everything else, and Vandy starts funneling NIL money to baseball to make sure, hey, we're not going to be upstaged by UT. And Vandy wins the title next year, then Vandy pulls back ahead. But as far as if there's any kind of argument, in my opinion, it's over. Tennessee's a better program. So now the question is to Tim Corbin, what's he going to do? What's Vandy going to do? Vanderbilt has 2 choices. Either step up to the plate or try to find another sport in which you can be better than UT. Because you're not going to be better than UT at football. You're probably not going to be better than UT at basketball, though they could be. You're not better anymore than UT at baseball. And you're not better than UT at women's basketball, though I do wonder about this coach they hired because she's got no real experience. But I'm just telling you, other than the fact that Vandy has 2 and Tennessee has 1, I don't think there's any argument for Vanderbilt as the better program. And not only that, not only do I not think there's not really an argument other than the 2v1, but Tony Vitello's done this in 5 years. Tim Corbin didn't transform Vanderbilt like that in 5 years. Now, I want to say he got there in 2002 and they had the number 1 team in 2007. But I don't think they got to Omaha until, 2011? I mean, Tennessee is just at what Vitello's doing is at an unbelievable rate. And so now the question is to Vandy. Are you going to step up to the plate to match it, or is this just another sport where, all right, we had baseball, that was our thing for 20 years, and now it goes back to UT? And that's a question that I ask for the top over there at Vanderbilt. And I love it because I love rivalries. And this is a real rivalry now. This is a true rivalry. Vanderbilt fans have got to be the most disappointed that they've been. And look, they've had some bad stuff happen over the last couple of years with the Stackhouse and football. This has to be the most upset they are because UT took their thing. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll get to your phones. A lot of you want to weigh in on this. Plus, there is something that happened yesterday that I got to roll my eyes at. It's like, really? We'll get to that. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game.
Now we are going to go back to Omaha because Peyton Manning is saying some words. We're going to hear from that VFL now.
Omaha.
It's awesome. It's awesome. I don't know any other word to describe it, right? We've been knocking on the door these past several years, and we've been close, kind of had our heart, ripped out, but you keep fighting, right? You don't say, hey, that was our shot, now, we're never going to get another shot. You just keep fighting, right? And I kind of live that as a player, and I have a real appreciation for Tony and these players for just continuing to fight and saying, hey, we're doing something right. Let's just keep knocking on the door. Let's keep sawing wood. And good things are going to happen, and it sure did happen tonight in Omaha.
There you go. That was Peyton Manning yesterday after the game, the local news. I mean, I love the beginning of that cut when the anchor's like, and now we go live back out to Omaha where we're sitting with Peyton Manning. And I was like, oh, God, really? Like, I'm not going to blame Peyton for this because I don't think Peyton was down on the field. Like, hey, come interview me. I think it was the cameras and the media. They saw Peyton. Oh, Peyton, what do you think about this? And it's like, does Peyton have to comment? Peyton Manning thinks. Like when Vanderbilt wins a baseball title, do they go run over to Jay Cutler and ask him what he thinks? Do they go ask Willie Geist? Hey, Willie, what do you think? Skip Bayless. What? Where's Skip? Hey, somebody get a microphone in front of Skip's face. I mean, I watched the football national championship. I don't remember them running to Tom Brady saying, Tom. And the Jim Gray, Tom. Going and running over to Tom Brady basically said, Tom, tell us what you think. And yet when it comes to Tennessee, what is the freaking deal? With everything has to be Peyton Manning this, Peyton Manning that. And again, I'm not mad at Peyton for this. It's not like, again, I don't think Peyton goes to Omaha and sits with Rick Barnes and sits with Josh Heupel and sits with Morgan Wallen because he wants it to be about him. I think it was up to Peyton, and I don't know Peyton very well, but I'm just, again, this is just my gut on kind of hit. My gut is Peyton would prefer it if nobody knew that Peyton was at the game yesterday. But do we have to run to Peyton? And do we have to, oh my God, hey, Peyton said, is Peyton Manning the president of the United States now? Is Peyton Manning the president of UT? And see, here's the thing that, again, people aren't going to want to hear because they want to just hear good things about the Vols today. For some reason, Peyton Manning has become the identity of the University of Tennessee. And I don't totally get it. Peyton was a great college player. But he's not the only great college player Tennessee's ever had. Lamar Jackson was a great Louisville Cardinal at my school. We don't run to Lamar every time. Lamar, what do you think of the new basketball coach, Lamar? We don't do that. And Lamar actually won the Heisman. But there's something about Peyton where it's like he is the unofficial spokesperson. I remember when John Curry got hired over Philip Fulmer as the athletic director. And who did they send out there when all the fans were upset? Who'd they send out there? They run out there to say, hey, go out in front of the people and tell them that this is a good one. And I'm just saying, we can have more people that represent Tennessee than just Peyton. It's okay. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com, 615-737-1025. Jason in Manchester says Tennessee will thrive in the unregulated NIL era with big money boosters like Jimmy Haslam, who can dump $300 million on Deshaun Watson. Imagine what players are getting, just like Jerry Jones with the Cowboys, pre-salary cap. I do think there is something to the NIL era. I do think that there is something as far as the NIL era is concerned about Tennessee and the fact that the University of Tennessee, the state of Tennessee, embraced NIL as soon as it became a thing. Tennessee embraced it. And it is obvious, and it's paying dividends across football, men's basketball, and baseball. They've got an $8 million, reportedly, $8 million quarterback who might be all that in a bag of chips. I do think that there's something to that. And the other thing about NIL, and I don't know if it's just Jimmy Haslam that's going to write the check. Again, I mean, I think Tennessee can find more people to represent the school to talk about it than Peyton. They can also find more people than Jimmy Haslam to donate. But I do think, money has never been a question when it comes to the University of Tennessee. Just like money's never a question for the other guys, A&M. They've got the oil money. Money's not a question for Texas. Money, I don't think, is a question for Georgia. Money's never going to be a question for UT. Fan support, never going to be a question. So in the NIL era, if it becomes, okay, is your fan base, booster base, are they allowed to go all in? Tennessee will. And if that equals winning, then Tennessee's going to win. I mean, it is not an accident that since NIL has become a real thing, the SEC has absolutely dominated in baseball. Absolutely dominated. Tennessee this year, LSU last year, I believe it was Ole Miss the year before, Mississippi State the year before that. And I know the SEC was really, really good. I mean, even Vandy in 2019, pre-NIL, Vandy won the national title, and we didn't have one in 2020. But the reason that is because more people in the SEC, there's more of a, we care about our baseball team. We care about our baseball team. We, even though our baseball team doesn't make any money, we care. And the other schools don't have the kind of money that the SEC schools have, specifically the ones that really care, like the Tennessees, the A&Ms, the LSUs, now Texas. They don't have the kind of money. They can't justify paying a baseball coach $3 million. That's what Tennessee's probably going to have to pay Tony Vitello. And Tennessee will do it. So if money equals winning, I don't think it's an accident. I had a coach tell me at a Power 5 school that's not in the SEC, I had a coach tell me, they said that coaching at our school, which again is not in the SEC, is like coaching is like running the Cincinnati Reds. You're in the Power 5, you fly nice flights, you have good players, you can win occasionally, but you're not the Yankees. You're not the Red Sox, you're not the Dodgers, you're not the Cubs. It's not an accident. Since NIL became a thing, LSU went out and got the one women's basketball coach that most people around the sport thought was paying the players under the table all the time when she was at Baylor. And they hired her, and they won a national title. And then they won a national title in baseball because they went out and they bought Paul Skeens. So it's definitely not an accident. The NIL is going to have a huge factor. One texter says that UT's NIL fund is $13.5 compared to Vandy's $2.1 million. I mean, again, Joe said, and I don't know where we get those metrics and numbers and anything else. Do you have to publicly report how much money your collective has in NIL? I don't think you do. Maybe you do because it's a donation, but I don't think I don't think you can write off a donation to NIL, right? Well, I'm donating to the children. Are you? Kinda.
The George Costanza Human Fund?
Thank you. Yes. But Joe made it sound like, and I know where the money's coming from. And so, or at least I've been told where the money's coming from. Joe makes it sound like Vandy's got completable NIL money. I don't know, but I'm just saying. One texter says Peyton is sitting next to Rick Barnes and Morgan Wallen. We did not get to hear their opinions after the game. Coach Barnes, what do you think about the baseball championship? I mean, I don't know. Look, I know everybody loves Peyton Manning, but one texter says Vol fans care about what Peyton thinks, and that's all that matters. Kevin says Jay Cutler was garbage in the NFL. Peyton Manning was the best quarterback in the NFL to come from UT. Dumbass Jared. Let me say this. Who's the most famous Vandy guy? Like, again, who's the one guy who people are like, hey, that's Vandy. And obviously, like, Grantland Rice died all those. He doesn't count. Who's the most Vandy person? By the way, is it Skip Bayless? Like, do we think Vandy when we think Skip Bayless? Dansby Swanson, David Price. Vandy just hired a basketball coach. We run a David Price. What does David Price think about the Vandy basketball? No. But with Peyton, it's like, oh my God, UT just hired a new rowing instructor. Peyton, what do you think? Well, I'll tell you, I'm really excited about our new rowing coach, Coach Johnson. She's really somebody. It's actually Coach Jackson. Oh, okay. Yeah. Coach Jackson, she's really good. It's like we got to hear what Peyton has to say. Kevin says, suddenly Tennessee wins and Vanderbilt is garbage. Hush. Kevin from Florida who's on a cruise to Mexico. I didn't say Vandy was garbage. But Vandy's lost in the regional 3 straight years. And again, the proof is in the pudding. Vandy has not been winning since the NIL era has begun. Vandy was the king of the mountaintop. Anytime we talk about Vandy, Floyd used to have a certain level of disdain for Vanderbilt, and Floyd really did not have a lot of disdain about a lot of things. There were things he didn't like the ball going out of the back of the end zone, going to the other team, Mike Lombardi, and Vandy. And when it came to Vandy, I think the reason why he didn't like Vandy is because that year that the Oilers played at Vandy, they went to Vanderbilt and they offered to build new locker rooms or renovate the locker rooms because they got to Vandy's football stadium and they said, this is not an NFL stadium. This is not an NFL stadium. And he goes, these locker rooms are not NFL standard. So what we'll do is we'll renovate your locker rooms. This for 1 year will be the Oilers locker room, and then after that, you can have them, and it'll be an NFL caliber locker room, and we'll pay for it. And Vandy said, no, thank you. And I think from then on out, I think he just had like a level of disdain for Vanderbilt. Floyd said if he was commissioner of the SEC, he'd try to kick Vandy out of it. But that was back when we'd start saying things like that, and people are like, but Vandy baseball. And the Vandy baseball fans are calling about how baseball, they're the best, they're this, they're that. You're not the best anymore. You're not the best. You're not the best in your own state. Tennessee is the best. And the trajectory, it doesn't even look close. Like, I don't know about you guys, but we have to wonder, does Tim Corbin still have it? Meanwhile, Tony Vitello's like 40 years old, and he's out there crowd surfing after the game. And he gets the modern athlete today. The thing that Nick Saban couldn't get over. 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025 here on our program. If you guys want to weigh in. So, there's a little news coming down the pipe. Very hearty congratulations to get to, which we'll do next. Plus, I do have a thought on the hockey game last night, which was fabulous. We'll wrap all that in there. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company. By the way, at 3 o'clock, Tony Khan, who runs AEW Wrestling, but more importantly, he's like the chief strategist for the Jags, i.e. his dad owns the team, and he's second in command. And he will join us, and we will ask him about that Trevor Lawrence contract. And we'll ask him about Calvin Ridley. And we will ask him about all those things, so that's coming up at 3 o'clock. Stillman and Company. Let's talk Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I know Hiller's excited because they are proud supporters of the Tennessee Volunteers. That's right. And let's face it, things often aren't as simple as they should be when it comes to your home. This summer, Hiller is making summer simple with real-time technician tracking. You'll know exactly where they are when they're on their way, and you can trust that they have the best and brightest techs coming into your home, fixing all of your problems on their first trip out. From now until June 30th, enjoy a free service call with work performed or take $25 off any plumbing or electrical repair. Visit happyhiller.com today for details. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical proud supporters. The Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face truck today. Congratulations are in order as the Hockey Hall of Fame has announced its inductees to the latest edition of the Hockey Hall of Fame. This is not the U.S. Hall of Fame. This is the real deal. And Colin Campbell, who I actually ran into the other night when I was at the game, he's inducted in there. We don't care about that. Both David Poile and Shea Weber have been inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Now, Shea Weber is still active, and I believe he's on the Utah team's roster. You know, he's been traded like 6 different times because I think they want this, like, teams want that LTIR money. And then in the case of Weber, Arizona acquired him last year so they could meet the salary floor even though he's not playing for them. And so he's still technically an active NHL player, but because he hasn't played in 3 years, the rules say that he's eligible for the Hall of Fame. I'm not here to rain on any parades. Congratulations to David Poile. Congratulations to Shea Weber. And it's funny because a couple years ago, the Predators acquired Philip Myers. I don't know if you guys remember that. He was part of that Ryan Ellis deal that noted them the great Cody Glass. And in the deal, when they originally made it, Philip Myers was assigned number 6. I said, number 6? What? You're giving Philip Myers. Who the hell is Philip Myers? You're giving Philip Myers number 6? And somebody at the time with the organization, not with the team anymore, said, well, Shea Weber doesn't own number 6. I'm like, you got to retire Shea Weber's number 6. And then they changed Philip Myers' number, so I think they even decided, we're not going to give away Shea Weber's number 6. Which is good, because Shea Weber becomes the first real Nashville Predator inducted in the Hall of Fame. Like, the Titans don't have a single player over the years that is a true Tennessee Titan that's in the Hall of Fame. Sure, Bruce Matthews made it, but he's a Houston Oiler. Kevin Mawai made it, but he did that as a New York Jet. There's not a guy, there are guys that have played for the Titans, but there's not a guy where it's like, that is a Titan. I hope Derrick Henry becomes the first one to do it. Now, on to the Poile front of him being named to the Hall of Fame. It is not a secret that at the end of David Poile's run, I was not a fan. And I thought that the organization was ready to move in a different direction. I'm glad that they have, and I think that they've done a good job. But let me say this. David Poile did more with less for so many years when this situation here was so bad. Nobody wanted to own the team. This team didn't make any money. Nobody in town cared. And somehow they survived. And David Poile made, I think, again, I didn't like it at the time as a fan when they moved off of Barry Trotz to hire Peter Laviolette, but that was the right move at the time. The trade for Philip Forsberg, Martin Erat wants a trade. They trade him for Philip Forsberg. That was a great move. Their scouting department, which I was actually thinking about this the other day. And I was thinking about the scouting department and how, like, some people say, well, that's the scouts, and as opposed to that's the scouts, it's like, hey, Barry's responsible. Whatever players they end up drafting, Barry's responsible for that. So I don't know how much Barry knows about this 19-year-old defenseman that they just traded a second-round pick for. He's a prospect. He's ranked number 12, according to The Athletic in the Detroit farm system, but it doesn't matter. That's Barry's responsibility. I'm sure David did not really know who Pekka Rinne was when they drafted him in the 8th round, but the scout was saying, hey, Rinne's a good guy. We're in the 8th round. The scout's all in. Okay, guess what? David oversees that scout. So David gets credit for Pekka Rinne, and he should get credit for Pekka Rinne. So that 17 team, Rinne, Yossi, PK, Victor Arvidsson, Mike Fisher, that was David Poile's team. And David Poile built a team that really got this city to love hockey. And so I certainly, at the end, was not as big of a David Poile fan. I absolutely think this is a great honor for David Poile. Just like I absolutely think that David Poile, as they started the Predators Golden Hall of Fame or whatever it is, and he was the first member, he absolutely should be in the Golden Hall of Fame. He absolutely should be the first member, and he absolutely should be the chairman of it or whatever it is. So congratulations to him. This is a lifetime achievement award for what has been a very, very, very long tenure as a general manager in the NHL. And again, I don't know what the all-time rankings are. If David Still is the all-time winningest general manager in terms of most wins, that probably should get you in the Hall of Fame. On the Shea Weber front, like I said, I'm not here to rain on any parades. I'm not sure Shea Weber's a Hall of Famer. I'm just going to be honest. He was a very, 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 very good player. But he wasn't a Hall of Famer, was he? I'm not going to be upset about it or rain on anyone's parade about it. I just think we should be a little honest sometimes. If Derrick Henry never gets put in the Hall of Fame, I'll be really upset about that. And I would make the argument when it comes to Derrick Henry that, the first 2 years they didn't use him much because of DeMarco Murray. And then Derrick Henry was the most dominant running back in the NFL for an entire era. And Derrick Henry won all those games running the ball, and he ran for 2,000 yards, and he won 2 rushing titles. And he was, I think, in the top 3-4 times, and all of those things. And I'll be upset if we live in a world where Edgerrin James is a Hall of Famer and Derrick Henry is not. But if Shea Weber had never gotten in the Hall of Fame, I'm not sure I would have been too upset about that. Because I'm not sure Shea Weber's a Hall of Famer. And when we put guys like Shea Weber in the Hall of Fame, it kind of, in my opinion, it kind of waters down the Hall of Fame, right? When you put Scott Rowland in the Baseball Hall of Fame, Scott Rowland's not a Hall of Famer. We put some of these random guys in the Football Hall of Fame that I'm like, why? Why are we putting Dwight Freeney into the Football Hall of Fame? Bruce Smith, I understand. Dwight Freeney? Really? Calvin Johnson, got it. Matt Ryan? No. So, one texter says that Team Canada is part of the reason that Shea Weber is going to be put in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I guess there's that. Ian, do you count that? Do you care about that? Is that the Team Canada thing?
I guess you have to count it. I'm not sure they've done too much winning, though, because there just haven't been as many NHL players in the international as much lately. But I think he does have 1 gold medal.
Look.
And Poyle does still have the most wins in GM history. Yeah.
Okay. So I can roll with David Poyle in the Hall of Fame. I'm fine with that. Again, I'm not going to protest outside the Hockey Hall of Fame if they didn't put those guys in. In Poyle's case, God bless him. All those years as GM and he didn't win a title, and he won 1 title, it would have been a slam dunk. But he probably belongs in the Hall of Fame. Shea Weber? Now, Vingan says it's the Hockey Hall of Fame, not the NHL Hall of Fame. And there is that argument as far as Warren Moon is concerned. He's, with all those stats he had in Canada, it's the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's not the NFL Hall of Fame. So if you want to give it to Weber based upon the gold medal, I believe it was 2010 that Weber won that gold medal, I guess. Robbie Stanley says he thinks Weber's a Hall of Famer. He said, I thought him not being a Norris winner would keep him out, even though he should have won 2. He was a huge part of 2 gold medals, which matters as well. So,
yeah, he's been in the top, Norris 4th place, Norris 3rd place, 2nd place twice, 4th place again. So he's been in the top 5 in the Norris Trophy race, a fair amount.
But a first ballot Hall of Famer? Really? First ballot? Again, who cares? I'm not knocking it. Shea Weber, do not be upset that you got in the Hall of Fame. My opinion, who cares? But, again, to me, Sidney Crosby is a first ballot Hall of Famer. Shea Weber ain't Sidney Crosby. So that means PK's getting in the Hall of Fame too, right?
No, not necessarily.
You got to be. If PK Subban, who won the Norris, is not in the Hockey Hall of Fame, but Shea Weber is, I'll be stunned. That'll be, make of it what you will. And I don't know his juniors history and his world history and all of that, but whatever. 615-737-1025. Tony Khan will join us. Tony usually pops on with us at the Super Bowl. Tony runs AEW, the wrestling league. They've got an event at Bridgestone Arena. But Tony also runs the Jags with his dad. And they just signed Trevor Lawrence to the richest contract in NFL history. So Tony will join us next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. So a lot going on. People always say, June, July, those are the dog days of summer. Well, Tennessee just won the national championship in baseball. We had what I thought was an incredible Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Final last night, which I would love to know what the local TV rating ends up being as far as Game 7 of the Cup Final is concerned. And we've got all kinds of storylines. You got Shea Weber and David Poyle headed to the Hall of Fame, and hockey free agency opens up in the draft and everything else. So I don't know this whole dog days thing. I mean, we don't have training camp, but it's coming soon enough. And so Tony Khan joins us now on the program. He, of course, runs AEW, the All. And I think, by the way, very, very excited about how All Elite Wrestling Blood and Guts is coming to Bridgestone Arena on Wednesday, July 24th. You can purchase tickets with a 6:30 start time. AEW, again, you can also watch AEW on TNT and TBS. Tony joins us now on the program. And, of course, Tony and his family own the Jags. So, Tony, first of all, congratulations. Thanks for joining us. Normally, we sit down and chat with you at the Super Bowl, but now that we got Blood and Guts coming to Bridgestone Arena, great to chat with you today.
Hey, thanks for having me on today. I really appreciate it.
So I want to start first on the big Trevor Lawrence contract, because that was the thing that everybody saw, the money, and it was like, oh, my God. Now, most of us don't have the kind of money to be able to pay Trevor Lawrence that kind of money, but I've always said when it comes to paying the quarterback in the NFL, I want the Titans one day to be able to pay a quarterback 300, 400, whatever million it ends up being, the day that the Titans get a franchise quarterback that is worth that kind of money. And I would be happy to see my team have that guy the way, say, Kansas City loves the contract that they have to pay Patrick Mahomes. When it comes to Trevor, and you guys made the decision to invest in him, how much of this was you know what, we've got to have a quarterback, and this is the market rate for a quarterback? And how much of it was, hey, no, Trevor is our guy in Jacksonville, and we are proud to give him this kind of contract?
Well, Trevor is our guy in Jacksonville. We're really proud. He's a great quarterback. He's one of the top young quarterbacks in football, and we really believe he's the future of our franchise, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and also with Trevor, yes, like you said, the market rate is high for top quarterbacks, and Trevor is one of the top young quarterbacks in the game. He's performed at top level, and we really believe Trevor's the quarterback for the long-term future of the Jaguars, and that's why we were really excited to extend his contract and keep Trevor in Jacksonville for a long time.
You know, it's funny. I told people, because people saw the contract, they said, oh, my God, that's Joe Burrow money. And I said, they're around him every day. We may look at Joe Burrow and the fact that the Bengals were in the Super Bowl and that Jacksonville got to the divisional round of the playoffs with Trevor, but you guys are around him every day. I said, I may not look at Trevor and see, okay, this is quarterback X or Y, but they look at Trevor and they think, no, this quarterback is as good as anybody else and the money that anybody else makes. Would you say that's accurate about how you guys feel about Trevor Lawrence?
We absolutely think Trevor's a top young quarterback in the NFL. We think he's one of the best young players, and he's a leader of the Jaguars. He's a leader on the field and off the field, and you couldn't ask for a better person. He's just tremendous, and he's beloved in our community. We're so happy to have Trevor, and the fans are thrilled that we announced a long-term contract extension for Trevor. It really feels like there's a really good direction around the Jaguars.
Last one on the Trevor contract, Tony Khan with us. You're known for being really into analytics. You know, we've talked about it at the Super Bowl about the analytics and where the game's trending. When you have a quarterback like Trevor, and he's only 24 years old, and since he was 19 as a true freshman and beat Alabama in the championship game, people thought, okay, this guy, he's going to be the number one pick. He's going to be the next John Elway, Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, number one pick quarterback. How much of the contract is, hey, we've got a quarterback, this is the market rate for the quarterback, we pay it, and how much of it is our analytics say we need to pay Trevor Lawrence this money?
Well, I think the market dictates contracts, and in this case, quarterback money for the top players is a lot. So, that's what data is. I mean, analytics isn't some dirty word. It's math. and science, and it's based on football, and it's statistics from football games. It's not made up numbers like some commentary tries to make it out to be. So it's really, when you look back at how the results have been, the Jaguars have been much more successful with Trevor than any point in the last really 15, 20 years as far as consistent winning team and having a top passing game. And when Trevor's played at his best, we've had the best results we've had in many, many years. This is going to be my 13th season with the Jaguars. And the few years we've had here with Trevor have been real progress for our team. So he's a top player, and the market for the top Trevor Lawrence for the really want Trevor here. For our coaches and everybody who works in football at the Jaguars, Trevor has been a breath of fresh air. And absolutely, we all wanted to extend him for a long time.
So I got to ask you, I was on the air when the news that the Titans were signing Calvin Ridley broke. And around here, there was a lot of celebration because we watched Trevor throw the ball to Calvin Ridley last year, especially at the game in Jacksonville where they absolutely wore the Titans out. Obviously, football's a business. Some guys sign with Jacksonville from other teams like a Christian Kirk, and then there's going to be guys that end up not re-signing in Jacksonville. But how did it feel to lose the production of a Calvin Ridley and to lose him in the division to know you're going to have to play him twice a year?
Well, I think it was a tough call. But again, when you're heading into free agency, there's tough choices. Everybody here really likes Calvin. He's a great person, great player. And that's why we went into the draft. And we knew that we had to target a top or get more picks in this year's draft and get picks in next year's draft. And we really believe the receiver that we picked in the first round, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU, is one of the top young receivers on the planet. And we loved him in this draft, and we thought he could have gone much, much higher. And we were fortunate. We were able to trade back, and the player we wanted was still there. And not only picked up more picks, but also got a great young receiver. We've had to make some trades and transfers and move people around, and I think that's good. And obviously you lose players in free agency, and I think with Brian Thomas Jr. coming in, that definitely fills a major need for us, and Calvin did a lot of great things for us last year too.
Tony Khan with us, of course. He's running the Jags, and of course AEW, and AEW will have blood and guts at Bridgestone Arena. I think what's fascinating about AEW, Tony, is it's not old. It's not new, but it's not old. It's almost like you invented a wrestling league out of thin air saying, okay, we are going to add another league here. I look at where the TV ratings are going. I look at the TV ratings that AEW's getting, and I'm thinking to myself, man, you guys were on the forefront of, hey, these networks, the people, it's really about the people. They want to watch sporting events, live sporting events. Let's create something. You guys are getting TV ratings. Are you surprised about how successful AEW's been so far?
I'm thrilled with it. I'm not surprised, and I'm very happy. We just celebrated our 5-year anniversary, and now we're coming back to Nashville, as you said, very soon, just next month, weeks from now. It's Wednesday, July 24th. 7/24, easy to remember. And we're bringing our biggest TV show of the year to the Bridgestone Arena. It's so great to come to downtown Nashville, which has got a great history of pro wrestling, and bring big-time pro wrestling. The show will be live on TBS at 7 p.m., and we go live on TBS every Wednesday at 7 p.m. We have a great show tomorrow, if you check it out, and every Wednesday on TBS. And the show we bring July 24th is the biggest event of the year, the Blood and Guts double cage match. And we're learning about everyone taking sides. The Elite have made a bid for a hostile takeover of AEW. It's made a lot of national news and mainstream headlines. And right now, like you said, AEW, we've got so many great things going on. On Friday, we were number one in our time slot on cable. We just did another great rating on Saturday. And every weekend, we do great wrestling on TNT on Fridays and Saturdays, just like this coming weekend, and also have the very best live wrestling every Wednesday night on TBS. That's what we're going to bring on July 24th to Nashville. I'm not surprised by our success. I'm thrilled by it, and I'm so glad we get to come there to Nashville, which is one of the best wrestling cities on the planet, and bring AEW's very biggest TV show of the entire year that blood and guts double cage match. It is always a great pleasure to be in Nashville. And this year, I'm really pleased to bring our biggest show to you guys.
Tony Khan's with us. I am fascinated by TV rights. I am fascinated specifically about you're obviously involved in the NFL with the best TV deals in the country, but with AEW and you guys are on TNT and Turner. And I'm fascinated by this NBA deal from this standpoint. The TV ratings for the NBA playoffs and the NBA finals this year went down. And they're certainly nowhere near the Michael Jordan or LeBron James, or Kobe Bryant eras, in terms of the peak viewership. And some of that is probably about fragmentation with all the streaming services and everything else that's come out. But I do wonder this. The NBA's doubled their TV revenue, even if their ratings have not doubled and they've actually maybe gone down a little bit. Why is that? Why is the demand for live sports so huge as far as the dollars are concerned, even if the audience is technically getting smaller?
Right now, live sports is the best way to draw a consistent audience for the top networks, cable channels, and streaming services. It's really at a point where every major player in content is making moves in sports, and that includes pro wrestling. The media rights for wrestling companies have been tremendous, and AEW is at the forefront. We have a big opportunity with AEW going into our media rights renewal. So like you, I'm fascinated by media rights, just like you are. And I think it's really interesting. And we've talked about this before at the Super Bowl and in person. And, I think it's something to keep an eye on. But definitely the NBA is going to get a huge deal. They're going to draw huge revenues, get a big contract. And that's been happening in the industry. Top sports leagues like the NFL, the NBA, and now AEW are looking to draw big dollars for the content and for the rights fees. And I think, as you said, there's more ways to watch the content, but the one thing that consistently still does bring big audiences, no matter how much viewership has changed and the platforms change, it's live sports. The one league that continues to grow and is at the very top and continues to find new ways to innovate at the forefront of media is the NFL. The NFL is the biggest sporting league in the world and continues to grow the pie, grow the revenues, and grow the audience. And I think the NFL has it figured out better than anybody, but definitely all the big sports leagues, including the NBA, and yes, AEW, All Elite Wrestling, are poised for big media rights renewals in the coming year.
When your family got involved with the Jags, Tony Khan's with us, when your family got involved with the Jags, did you guys know that the NFL was on the trajectory that it has been on over the last decade?
Yes, my father is one of the smartest business people in the world. He came here with a few $100s in his pocket from Pakistan when he was 16 years old to go to the University of Illinois. And he met my mom in college in Champaign. He moved to America. He's lived in America almost 60 years now. And everything he has, he built from scratch and did by himself. And he saw what was happening with the NFL. And really, he bought an NFL team now for probably less than 10% of what it would cost on the open market. And I think that goes to show what a sense he has as a businessman and a leader. And really, he's the person who inspired me in everything I do.
Tony Khan's with us. Last one for you on the program. The neck brace on draft night. I saw we were doing our draft show, and I saw the neck brace on draft night, and I said, what is going on with Tony Khan with the neck brace? And somebody said, oh, no, AEW this week, that maybe it's a stunt, maybe it's not. What happened to the neck? Why the neck brace, Tony?
Well, the night before the draft, as I mentioned, this is what we're going to settle to some extent in the best way possible, a blood and guts double steel cage match right there in Nashville. Well, I'll be there, and I will say I'll be watching it very closely because the Elite attacked me. The executive vice presidents of AEW, they made a power play. They had pushed me to reinstate their friend Jack Perry, which I did. And then after that, Jack and the executive vice presidents of AEW, the Young Bucks, they went for a hostile takeover. They attempted a power play against me, and they attacked me. They gave me a spike pile driver, and I don't have to tell you great people in the state of Tennessee, the spike pile driver is one of the deadliest moves in all of pro wrestling. It's illegal in a lot of wrestling leagues, not in AEW, because all moves are legal in AEW, even the most dangerous ones. And the spike pile driver is illegal. Did, as a silver lining, get a ton of attention worldwide on AEW. Throughout the NFL draft, the commentators brought attention to what was happening. Rich Eisen, in particular, throughout his coverage, mentioned, hey, Tony Khan got attacked this week on AEW Wednesday Night Dynamite on TBS. We're very concerned. And each round, Rich added more details, about how dangerous the spike pile driver is. And then in the later rounds on Saturday, day 3 of the NFL draft, as the Jaguars picked in each round, I still had the neck brace on. And Rich asked, hey, maybe Tony would, when he's ready, when he can take the neck brace off, donate the neck brace itself to charity, auction it off, and we could give the money to St. Jude. And Rich does this great thing with the Rich Eisen, Run, Rich, Run. They do the 40-yard dash, and it's for charity. And I thought it would be a great thing, so I gave Rich the neck brace, but I actually bought it myself and gave $100,000 to St. Jude personally and on behalf of AEW. And then I gave Rich the neck brace, which is on his set, and we were able to do something really nice for St. Jude and raise awareness to that charity. And also, it got tons of attention on the NFL draft. So it was a win-win in a lot of ways, except for the fact that I got hurt pretty bad, and it could have been a lot worse.
There you go. Blood and Guts, AEW, coming to Bridgestone Arena July 24th. The event starts at 6:30. The doors open at 5 o'clock. Again, AEW. And I believe it is on TBS that night, Tony?
It is. It is live on TBS, and it's the biggest show of the year on TBS. Everyone in Nashville, I promise you won't want to miss this. It'll be the best wrestling show to come through Nashville all year, and we're going to give you a great show July 24th, Wednesday night.
Tony, it's always great to chat with you, bud.
You too, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yep, Tony Khan, whether it's running AEW, running the Jags, always kind enough to join us at the Super Bowl, coming on with us again because Blood and Guts is coming to Bridgestone Arena. And, Ian, I have 2 takes from my Tony Khan conversation.
Okay.
One is on the Lawrence front. The other is not. We'll get to those next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Your value is what your franchise is willing to pay you, what the market is. Okay, so whether you think it's worth it or not, Jacksonville felt he's worth it. And they worth it, meaning $200 million is guaranteed.
Crazy.
It's crazy. Anybody see this coming? It was obvious that they were going to extend the deal.
I think unfortunately, we probably all saw this coming.
Just based on the signings.
Why unfortunately, though, Doc?
Yeah. Yeah, come on.
What has he done to earn this? What has he done? I must have forgot when Jacksonville made the Super Bowl the last couple of years. Joe Burrow's been to the Super Bowl. Joe Burrow almost won the Super Bowl.
Well, what about Justin Herbert?
Again, I don't think
I
don't think Herbert's worth that much. Lamar Jackson has 2 MVPs. Jalen Hurts been to a Super Bowl.
Almost won it.
Probably should have won it if not for a bad call.
The best player
in the league in the last decade isn't even on the list.
So there you go. That was the dudes filling in for Rich Eisen after Trevor Lawrence got paid. So we just had Tony Khan on. His dad owns the Jags. He runs them with his dad. And I asked him about Lawrence. And I said, when you sign Trevor Lawrence that contract, you're paying him as much as Joe Burrow. There's a lot of us that look at it and say, well, he's not Joe Burrow. But my feeling is you guys think that you've got Joe Burrow. And he goes, we think we've got the best young quarterback in the NFL in Trevor Lawrence. And that confirmed what I believed at the time. When they signed Trevor Lawrence to the contract and they said, hey, we're going to give Trevor Lawrence $55 million a year, the same amount of money Joe Burrow's getting, I said, you may not think he's Joe Burrow. I may not think he's Joe Burrow. But they think that he's Joe Burrow. Everybody always tries to convince themselves of a convenient narrative and so I feel as if they wanted to make sure that they had the quarterback contract done because they want the people of Jacksonville to want to build a stadium. And if you don't think that matters, go look. I was on Sirius talking hockey this weekend, and I can't tell you how many calls I got from Phoenix. And yet, when the voting referendum came down, Christian Kirk got hurt and Trevor got hurt, and we fired our entire defensive staff and blah, blah, blah. I am convinced of it. And then talking to him, he pretty much confirmed it. Also, when I asked him about Ridley and he brought up Brian Thomas Jr., I was like, oh, God. Because I remember when they drafted Thomas Jr., and I was like, he's going to replace Ridley. He's their new deep threat. And it reminded me of what Thomas Dimitrov said before the draft, the former Falcons GM. And he said on his, he runs that Sumer Sports, that analytic group. And he said on Sirius XM, he goes, you do not want to pay a wide receiver this year. You do not want to pay a receiver because you can go get receivers in the draft. It's why nobody traded for T. Higgins. And they said when it was like, hey, we love Calvin. We loved Calvin Ridley. Everybody liked his personality. Everybody thought he was a fit. But we just decided, we'll just trade back and draft Brian Thomas Jr. And there were probably other receivers that they looked at and they said, you know what? Talking about, we can get Brian Thomas Jr., and if we don't get him, we can get Xavier Legette. And if we don't get him, we can get, Keon Coleman. And if we don't get him, we can get A.D. Mitchell. And so they probably looked at it like that. The other thing, I said there were 2 things that Tony Khan made me think in that interview. July 24th, AEW. You guys know I am not a wrestling guy. I think wrestling is fake. I do not believe that Tony Khan actually needed that neck brace that he wore on the draft. I believe it was all for show. I believe that the booger eaters of America are the people that love wrestling. I'll admit, I know it's popular. I'm not a wrestling guy. Ian, I think I'm going, unless I have something that I can't think of off the top of my head.
All right.
I think I'm going to AEW on July 24th.
Yeah, it'd be the first, I think maybe first on the field day of Titans camp.
Oh.
Camp, I think their report date is the 23rd, if I remember that correctly. So, you should have some time to get to camp, check out some practice, maybe get a little nap, refresh the water, rehydrate.
What are you talking about? I have no time to do. The practice
is it a
over
weekday?
at like 12. Yeah. Practice is over at like 12:45. We're on the air at 2.
Well, if it's a weekday, we'll have to maybe adjust. I haven't checked the schedule. Let's see, 7:24. That is a Wednesday. Might be a tight squeeze if you make it to camp that day. Might be a long day. Could be worth it, though.
I think I might go. Just to see. Just to see. You going to go with me if I ask you?
Maybe, yeah.
Do you think Chase will go if I ask him?
Oh, well, he's already for sure going to go.
There is something to that. All right, 615-737-1025. The Cup Final game, I think the numbers haven't come out yet, or at least I haven't seen the numbers. They think it got around $6 million for a championship that doesn't involve a U.S. team, or that, one of the teams from U.S. they said was excellent ratings-wise. Game 7. And I got to take from last night's game, which I thought was an excellent game. We'll get to that coming up next. Stillman and Company right here on 102.5 and 106.3 The Game.
All fairness, Florida shut him down yesterday. They swarmed him. There was no time and space. And all that time and space that he had the last 3 games of the series, it was all gone. It was all gone. Florida brought back their defensive game. They got to their game early and often, and they were hard on him. And they made huge defensive plays. In a Game 7, The reason why it was an easy pick for me, defense wins championships. It don't matter who you are. The best defensive teams always get it done, especially in hockey. And for me, if I'm a player going into a Game 7, I want to be on the better defensive team. And it starts with Sergei Bobrovsky. So Sergei Bobrovsky definitely deserving.
That was PK this morning on First Take, which started their show on hockey. The first 30 minutes of First Take this morning, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, PK Subban talking about Game 7 last night. Ian, it almost brought a tear to my eye.
Oh, yeah. A little hockey talk to start.
Well, I love the NHL, and I want more hockey. Like,
I can't argue that. You know me.
Yeah, I mean, I think about how we talk hockey, and, you know, again, I've said this on the air that when I first got here, people around the city, not at our station, but around the city, say, you can't talk hockey and get ratings. Now, again, as a station, I think we've disproved that. But my whole thing about talking hockey is I want more people to care about hockey. I want more people to care about the Predators because then it allows us to talk it more. And they play 82 games.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I moved here a hockey fan. My family got season tickets for the Preds' first inaugural season. We had season tickets as a family for the first, I don't know, 5-7 seasons, something like that. You know, I went to the second ever Preds game, to the first ever win. My dad on the drive there, that was 98, so I was 15. My dad gave me like the Birds and the Beast talk on the way.
Really?
Yeah, on the way to our first Preds game, which was the second ever Preds game. So, I mean, I've been going for a long time.
And I don't know about, like, I listen to people talk about, you know, hey, you guys need to talk more this, you guys need to talk more that. We talk about what people care about. That's it. Then why do we talk Titans all the time? Because you guys care about the Titans. And so when I look at the Predators, I'm like, there are 82 games there. Like, the end of this week, we're going to have the draft on Friday for hockey. The Predators are going to be mentioned with some of these big names trying to trade for and everything else. And I'm like, you know, I want people to care about this because it makes it more fun to talk it on the radio. And so to see Stephen A. Smith, who went into this, and I don't really know much about hockey, but here's my thoughts on last night's game, and Shannon Sharp having his, and PK obviously a part of it. They definitely needed to have PK because they needed to have somebody that actually knew what they were talking about. But in PK's cut right there that we played, PK was talking about, you know, defense wins championships. I'm not sure that's true. And I think PK's team, the one here, is an example of that when you lost because of Crosby and Malkin and Kessel and that group. But when I watched TV today and I watched the breakdown of Game 7, and this is what TV does, and we do it too. So I'm not saying it's the wrong thing to do. But sometimes I think we get caught up in the big storyline, the big drama factor, it's, oh my God, this one game, and it means. And a lot of times there are games that are, hey, if Tennessee wins a national championship with the trajectory they're on, with the coach they have, they're a better program than Vanderbilt in baseball. That's one thing. But I listened to them today talk about McDavid, and again, PK saying, you know, defense wins championships in the NHL. That's not true. Who was the goalie in Vegas last year? Colorado the year before that. Sergei Bobrovsky had an .898 save percentage, I believe, or .889 or .899 or so. It was started with an 8. That's bad in the Cup final. But last night wasn't about McDavid and he can't win the big one and he can't. Last night was a game of two great teams giving everything they had, going all in, and with the margins that small, it's all about, you know, hey, McDavid has the puck on his stick right in front of the net, and in comes, I forget who it was. Was it Kulikov that came in there and broke it up?
Yeah, I think it was.
You know, Kulikov comes in and breaks it up.
Number 7, I think.
That's just a great hockey play. Last night, I mean, the guy that I love every time I watch Florida Panthers, because every time I watch the Panthers play the Predators, Verhaeghe scores. Carter Verhaeghe scores every time. Last night, he gets him on the board to begin. I thought that the Reinhart goal, I thought that was beautiful. Stuart Skinner's looking right at him. He waits for the traffic. He puts a puck on the net, and Stuart Skinner with the traffic can't see it, and it goes right through. Oh, it was gorgeous. It was a great hockey game. I mean, Edmonton, at the end of that third period, they gave it everything they have. Now, I didn't think that Chris Knobloch coached very well because, there was about, I want to say 3.5 minutes, and there was an offensive zone draw. And I thought right then and there, I'm like, you need to pull the goalie. And I know it's early at 3.5 minutes, but I would have pulled the goalie, offensive zone draw, because I'm thinking in my head, McDavid and Draisaitl have 2 more shifts in them because you're going to be able to get the offensive draw. And then after that, they're going to have to go off, and you're probably going to be able to bring them back out there with 1.5 minutes to go. And instead, he just kept him out there the entire time. Didn't pull the goalie, and by the time he went to pull the goalie, and by the time Edmonton was really kind of bringing their last attack on, McDavid and Draisaitl and Ekholm and Bouchard, those guys, they had nothing in the tank. So I did not think that was extremely well coached. But I don't think it's a referendum on Connor McDavid. I don't think it is a Connor McDavid can't live up to the expectations because he didn't score last night in Game 7. I don't think that's what last night was. I don't think last night was defense wins championships and Sergei Bobrovsky carried the Panthers to the cup. I don't believe that. Sometimes in sports, we try to look for a mass trend one way or another, and instead it's just, 2 great teams played a great game, and somebody has to lose it. Now, in the case of the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs, for instance, who play all these great games, and Josh Allen can't beat Mahomes, and the Bills can't beat Kansas City, and, well, considering that it's happened like 4 times now in the playoffs, that is something. And if McDavid goes to the Cup final and he loses 4 times, then we can look at it and say, I don't know if he can win the big one. But like when LeBron lost his first NBA Finals to San Antonio when they got swept, that wasn't the LeBron can't win the big one. It was LeBron can't win the big one when LeBron went to Miami with the other 2 and they lost to the Dallas Mavericks with Dirk. That's when it was like, ooh, I don't know about LeBron. And ultimately LeBron ended up winning some titles. But last night for McDavid or for any of that chatter, I think it's overrated. I think the game was just a great game. Somebody had to win. Somebody had to lose. And in this case, again, we talk about the ball bouncing your way, the puck bouncing your way, puck luck. We talk about, this guy took the wrong penalty at the wrong time. This guy made the play at the right time. This guy. That's what happened last night. When we talk about a series or we talk about a career where there are years of data that prove 1 point, that's one thing. We talk about one game. I don't think you can do that. I thought last night was a great game. I thought last night was incredibly exciting. I thought that in last night's game, the Florida Panther team, that's a fun team to watch. That's a really, really, really good team. And I was really rooting against them because for some reason I don't like Paul Maurice. Probably because he was the Winnipeg coach the year that they beat the Predators. That was really the Predators' year. But it was a great game last night. I thought it was a great game. And, the TV ratings came in around 6 million, and they're not final yet, but the estimation is going to be around 6 million. Boston, St. Louis in 2019 across the country, I think did somewhere around 8.7 million or something like that. So I'm a little disappointed. Now, again, those are 2 American teams. Yesterday featured a non-American team, and it's not like the Florida Panthers are the draw that the Boston Bruins are. But I do think that last night was a good night for the NHL. And it's okay. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. We'll get to your phones. 615-737-1025. So there's a common opinion that a lot of people have, that a lot of people were upset about last night, that I do not share at all. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025 if you want to weigh in. Hey, do not miss out on Nashville's best deal for Deacon's New South in downtown Nashville, where Southern service meets exceptional service. Their dry-aged steaks and chef-inspired dishes are complemented by inventive sides and desserts featuring locally sourced produce. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals to get a $50 gift card for only $25 while supplies last.
Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe Trophy. S.A., do you have a problem with that?
Initially, I thought I was because my ignorant self was thinking I was, regardless of knowing that it's a performance throughout the postseason, I was just so down on his performance last night that I was just thinking, damn, that this ain't the time for that. But I understand that he deserves it. I know how great he is. I know how phenomenal he is. PK has taught me that. He's been telling me that for the last couple of years or so. All right, and trying to get me to love hockey. PK, I had a phenomenal time last night. I really enjoyed it. It was a spectacular game, make no mistake about it. But we can't argue with the fact that he deserves the award when you consider how big time he was with the points that he was scoring, with the assists that he was scoring, what he did in games 4 and 5. Now, obviously, you say he could have done more in games 6 and 7, specifically game 7 for me. I'm just looking at him last night. 0 points, 0 assists on a total of 2 shots on goal. I just expected more from him in a game 7, considering the greatness that we know he is, that he possesses. When they call you McJesus, that's what they say, Connor McJesus. And PK himself has called him that. It's a game 7. And Shannon, PK, you guys know this a hell of a lot better than me. No matter how great you are, because nobody could ever dispute this guy's greatness or anything like that, moments are what it's all about.
That was Stephen A. earlier today talking hockey. Can you believe it? So a lot of people last night were upset that Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe. Why? The Conn Smythe Trophy is awarded to the most valuable player to his team in the playoffs. Is there any question that Connor McDavid was the most valuable player in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year? Any question? I mean, it certainly wasn't anybody on the Predators. And the thing about the Florida Panthers that made them so good, this is why they beat the Rangers. Florida was a great team. Yes, Matthew Tkachuk's their best player. But the thing about Florida is, and I remember this the year that the Predators played in the same division with them in the COVID year, they can kill you from all over. Barkov, Tkachuk, Verhaeghe. Verhaeghe scores every time they play the Predators. Reinhart had 50 goals this past year. Sam Bennett was massive for them in these playoffs, especially in the Rangers series. Kulikov on defense. Bobrovsky and net. They're a great team. But there wasn't one player that stood out more than Connor McDavid, who set an NHL record for points in a Stanley Cup playoff, had. So if you don't like it, because Caroline texted me today, and she said, can you believe that Connor McDavid won the Conn Smythe even though they lost? I said, yeah. It's the most valuable player in the playoffs, and that was, beyond the shadow of a doubt, Connor McDavid. And she said, I just don't think for a player for a team that didn't win a championship should win MVP. And I said, look, I think the MVP is the most valuable player. We have this argument whenever a great player like Mike Trout or A-Rod has a just incredible season for a horrible baseball team. And it's like, well, this is the most valuable player in the league, but his team sucks. So, I mean, are you the most valuable player or are you not? I mean, I hate to say this for Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy should never win the MVP because Brock Purdy's not the most valuable player. Brock Purdy's on a team with all great players. It's different for a guy like Lamar or even a guy like Mahomes, who Mahomes carries that team. Connor carried that team. This thing went to Game 7, went right down to the nub, and Leon Draisaitl was horrible. I mean, I got to say this. I don't even know who that was playing for Edmonton in the Stanley Cup Final, because the Leon Draisaitl I know that plays the Predators scores 10 goals a game. So I don't know what it is that the Florida Panthers know that the Predators don't. But, I mean, Draisaitl was a non-factor. That incredible power play that people were saying coming into the series was the greatest power play ever, and it was unstoppable, between Hyman with his 50 goals and Bouchard with his shot at the point and everything else, it was kind of neutralized. The one factor in the series, the big factor, was Connor McDavid. So if the award is MVP of the playoffs, which is what it is, that was McDavid. If the award is MVP of the Stanley Cup Final, then I'm not sure I would have given it to McDavid. Though I'd have a hard time giving it to Bobrovsky, who didn't even have a 9 save percentage in the series. But that's how this works. The award is MVP of the playoffs. And not only that, here's what's crazy. Bobrovsky had a 921 save percentage against the Rangers. Shesterkin had a 930. So Bobrovsky wasn't even the best goalie in the conference final. In the cup final against Stuart Skinner, who traditionally is not very good, Skinner had a 909. Bobrovsky had an 899. People are arguing that it should go to Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky wasn't even the best goalie in either of the last 2 series that he played. The only reason the Rangers were competitive with Florida was because of Shesterkin. So how can I give the playoff MVP award to a guy that wasn't the best goaltender in the cup final and wasn't the best goaltender in the conference final? How can you possibly do that? And I just don't think you can. So I think the NHL made the right call. And I know the Florida Panther fans booed when Gary Bettman got out there and announced that the Conn Smythe went to McDavid, but Connor McDavid deserved the Conn Smythe. He was the best player in the playoffs. I mean, I remember in the Cup Final in 17, and Crosby really took that thing over, when they got into Game 5 and 6. But I really thought that Pekka Rinne, had they forced a Game 7, I thought there was a chance Pekka Rinne could have won that Conn Smythe even though they didn't win. Because that's how good Pekka was in those playoffs. But the idea of, no, the most valuable player cannot go to a losing team, it's happened before. In baseball, it was funny because TD and I were talking about this. TD's a big Mets fan, and he's a big Darryl Strawberry guy, the 86 Mets. And I was like, do you remember Mike Scott? I was talking to TD about this. And TD was like, yeah, he still thinks Mike Scott was scuffing up the ball in the 86 NLCS. Because Mike Scott, the pitcher for Houston, 2 starts, 2 complete games, 1 run, so a 0.50 ERA, 19 strikeouts, 1 walk. He was the MVP of the series. They lost in 7, but he single-handedly won 2 games. He's the most valuable player of the series. He deserves the award. That's how this works. It shouldn't just go to the winning team unless it is the MVP of the winning team. If it's the MVP of the winning team, then you can't give it to McDavid. But that's not the award. So I have no problem with the idea of giving the Conn Smythe to McDavid. I also think, we're still 1 Cup Final away from saying, I don't know if McDavid can win the big one, but I'm not throwing him under the bus for this, and he absolutely was the best player in these playoffs, and he's absolutely the best player in the world. He's absolutely the best player in the world, and it's not even close. I know Austin Matthews scored 70, but it's not close. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Congratulations to Vols fans. Tennessee's finally won a national championship in one of the meaningful sports for the first time since Pat Summitt did it in 2008, 16 years ago. And the biggest thing that people take away from that Pat Summitt, last championship with Candace Parker was what Don Imus said the next day about the Rutgers women's basketball team. But coming up next, there is one thing Tennessee fans can truly feel, and I don't even think there's much of an argument against it. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. And let's go ahead and give something away. Why not? But first, Ian, X out the phones, because I'm going to tell them about the Sounds tonight as they take on the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp at 5:50 with the pregame, 6:05 first pitch. And I believe this is on the road. And so it'll be on 94.9 The Fan, Sands 94.9 The Fan, Sounds Baseball on The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks Family Leisure, 5 Points Roofing, Caudill Vet Clinic, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Now, Ian, unlock the phones. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025, and you will win a pair of tickets to see Sarah McLachlan at Ascend Amphitheater this Saturday night. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live up from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Congratulations to the Tennessee Volunteers on winning the baseball national championship. I know it's not a football championship, and that is kind of the crown jewel. But that should not take away from your joy of having won a baseball championship. That is an incredible task. And again, there are 4 college sports people care about, and baseball is one of them. Football 1, men's basketball 2, and then I think women's basketball and baseball are kind of tied for 3 and 4. So I've been a Titans fan pretty much my entire life. I've been a Predators fan. I love college sports. And sometimes I've noticed that fan bases and teams try to convince themselves that their guy is as good as anybody out there. We had Tony Khan on an hour ago. He owns the Jags. He said, we think Trevor Lawrence is as good as any quarterback out there. They really think that. I don't. But I've always been jealous of people that have the best, right? As a Titans fan, I was jealous of Peyton Manning and Tony Dungy. They're the best quarterback. Every time they came in here, it didn't matter if they messed up a free agent signing or let a guy go, or it didn't matter. Blow a draft pick. Didn't matter. Yeah, Peyton. He'd figure it out. As a Predators fan, Pecorine was good. Shea Weber's in the Hall of Fame, apparently. I always liked guys like Mike Fisher, and I like Forsberg and Yossi. But you never had Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin. You never had Taves and Kane. You don't have Connor McDavid now. I am jealous of those teams that have those guys while I have Ryan Johansson. So I understand the lust for greatness. Tennessee baseball fans, you've got the best coach in America. Tony Vitello is the best baseball coach in America. I do not care about other coaches that might have more national championships like Tim Corbin, other coaches that might have more College World Series appearances like Jim Schlossnagle, coaches that have done it in 2 places like Jay Johnson. I don't care about that. Because over the last 5 years, it's been the 5 years that Tony Vitello has been the coach, they consistently have had the best program. Now, I don't know what Dave Hart saw in Tony Vitello at Arkansas as an assistant that made him say, that guy is the best coach in the country. But he hit the nail on the head. He is, to me, the Nick Saban right now of baseball. You've got the guy. You've got the best coach. Other schools may argue that their coach is as good or their coach is better or their coach is. But over the last 4 years, has their coach been to the College World Series 3 times? The 1 year he didn't go, have the number 1 team and win a national title? No. There are just some guys. There are some coaches that are more passengers than they are drivers. Think Ed Orgeron with that national championship team at LSU. That's one of the best teams I've ever seen in my life. Ed O's a terrible coach. Well, you know we're going to go and go Tigers. Terrible coach. Nick Saban's not. Wins a title at LSU. Wins all those titles at Alabama. Doesn't matter who the athletic director is. Doesn't matter who the quarterback is. Doesn't matter what the boosters are doing. Doesn't matter if it's NIL, not NIL. Doesn't matter. Nick Saban wins. Best coach. That's Vitello. It doesn't matter that he loses Jordan Beck. It doesn't matter that he loses Drew Gilbert. It doesn't matter that he lost Ben Joyce. It doesn't matter that they lost Chase Dollinger. It doesn't matter. And he's going to lose these guys too. He'll lose Christian Moore. He's going to lose every single guy. He's going to lose them all. And they'll still be good because he's a really, really, really good coach. And college athletics has changed over the last 4 or 5 years. There is no way around it. When the United States Supreme Court, which a lot of people don't like right now, but when the United States Supreme Court agrees 9-0, which means that Clarence Thomas and Sonia Sotomayor both agreed on something, there's no way college sports is going to operate the same way it was operating before. And once that happened, the game changed. NIL, transfer portal, now we're paying the players. You know, I was thinking about this yesterday. I forget, did somebody say this on the show yesterday? I can't remember. If I was a player, if I was one of the better baseball players around the country in high school, you know, my mom was always big on college. You know, and I hope a lot of people's parents were always big on college. It was an expectation for me to go to college. But if I was one of the better baseball players across the country, and I was going to go with the 7th overall pick in a draft, or I was going to be, you know, a top 2-round pick where we're talking about signing for $1 million, and they do pay for your college, you can get that agreed to. If I was going to be in that situation 5-6 years ago, it would have been hard to turn down the money because you are better off going the route of minor league ball and getting that signing bonus and working your way up to the majors. You are better doing that than you are going to college. Now, I go to college, I get paid. So the signing bonus, okay, I'll just go get that in college. Better facilities, chartered flights, hot girls, strength coaches, and all in all, better coaches. Because no AA manager is making the kind of money Tony Vitello is going to make to be able to work with you on your swing. He's the best coach in college baseball. Since the game has changed, he has consistently been the best. It does not matter who the athletic director at Tennessee is, because he's had 3. It does not matter who the best player is. It does not matter who the pitcher is. It does not matter. It's him. He's the guy. And for years, Tennessee fans have had to look at Nick Saban at Alabama and just wish their coach was that good. Josh Heupel might be a very good coach. I certainly think he's the best coach Tennessee's had in a long time. But he's not Nick Saban. He's not Kirby Smart. You know, he's winning more than the guys before him, and they won an Orange Bowl, and that's great. But Kirby had Georgia in the national championship in year 2. Heupel didn't. He's not those guys. And so if I was a Vol fan, I'd be jealous that my team didn't have Kirby Smart as the coach. In basketball, Rick Barnes is a very good coach, is very well respected, but he never wins anything that matters. So you can't look at yourself and then look at John Calipari, who won a national title at Kentucky, and say, oh, man, you know, we've got the best coach. You can't say that. Can't say that when Coach K was at Duke and he had Zion Williamson and you were kind of battling it out. And can't say you didn't have the best coach. But in baseball, you've got the best coach. He is the best coach. And I say this as times have changed. And I say this thinking about, you know, the last era of baseball coaches. Maybe Tim Corbin at one point was the best coach, but he's not anymore. And there are just some guys where it's not a fluke. It's not an accident. They are a great coach, and greatness follows them. I'll be honest. People are going to get mad at this when I say it. Belichick, there's kind of a question mark around. Because he wasn't good without Tom Brady in Cleveland. He wasn't good with Drew Bledsoe in New England. And he wasn't good after Tom Brady. Tom Brady won a Super Bowl somewhere else. Augie Garrido is probably the best college baseball coach of my lifetime. Augie won a national title at Cal State Fullerton. Augie won national titles at Texas. Augie won his titles. Again, 2 different conferences, well, really 3. 2 different parts of the country. 2 different programs. And he won his first title in 1979. He won his last in 2005. When you're that good for that long, it's you. In fact, Augie, they were runner-up. Texas was in 2009. They went to the World Series in 2014. Again, Augie's first title was 1979. That is not an accident. That is when you have the coach. And Tony Vitello is the coach. That's his program. If he left tomorrow, I'm not sure UT baseball would be the UT baseball they've been for the last 5 years. I think it's more likely they'd be the UT baseball they were before Tony Vitello. Now, I don't think there's any reason to think that Vitello's going to leave, but he is UT baseball right now. And not only that, sometimes when it comes to fan bases and personalities, and sometimes there are just perfect players for perfect teams, he is the perfect coach as far as his personality is concerned for that fan base. And so while Tennessee fans can look out the window and they can try to talk themselves into their quarterback, if he's not the best quarterback in the country, say, oh, well, our quarterback's good enough. Our football coach good enough. Our basketball coach is good enough. This is the one time, like when you had Pat Summitt, where you can say, we've got the best in the country. He is the best in the country. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025, if you want to weigh in. So, Greg McElroy, boy, he said something today. Woof! He said something that apparently has pissed Tennessee fans off. I actually think it's kind of funny. We'll get to that next. Let's talk Window Nation. That's right. I love Window Nation. I find Window Nation to be the most reputable company that I've ever worked with when it comes to windows and window replacement and everything else. Why? Because when I first started talking to Window Nation, I invited them out to my house. I wanted to get the consultation. I wanted to know what they were all about. And then I wanted to know, hey, can you replace my windows and give me the energy-efficient windows that you guys have? And they came on out. They showed me the whole spiel with the good, better, best windows, the energy-efficient windows to lower those prices. I said, all right, go look at the windows and you tell me what windows I need to replace. They came back to me and said, you don't need to replace your windows. I said, what? They said, you don't need to replace them. And that's how I knew it was an honest company. So there are a lot of window companies that are offering great deals. They're going to spam your mailbox, and you're going to get – I can't tell you about those companies. I can tell you about Window Nation. Window Nation is honest. They are the best. And they've got their semi-annual sale going on now through June 30th. Take advantage of it. 50% off all windows. No interest for 5 years. And a 10% bonus savings, so that's really 60% off, when you schedule an in-home estimate. Again, 50% off all windows, no interest for 5 years, 10% savings with the in-home estimate. Call 866-90-NATION or visit windownation.com. This ends June 30th. That's 866-90-NATION, windownation.com.
Tony, there's been a lot of talk tonight about grit or blue collar, and just how have you tried to embody that in the program and bring those kinds of players to Knoxville to get a moment like this one?
Yeah, I think we've tried to build a support staff that kind of has that image. I mean, when we first came to Knoxville, you're looking at came from Arkansas, arguably the best fans in the league and best stadium, huge crowds, winning tradition. Florida's got in-state players. Vandy's got their niche going on. Mississippi State's facility's incredible. Coach Bianco turned that thing into a monster. Like, there's all the LSU's traditions as good as, if not better than everybody's. So, like, how are we going to compete? And that was kind of our answer when we had that long conversation. So we had to start filling in the people that we wanted to hire. Unfortunately, there were some good baseball people that left the program, but we had a clean slate. So the people that we brought in, we wanted them to be self-made people.
That was Tony Vitello. Again, I think Tony Vitello is the best baseball coach in the country. By the way, our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Eli from Smyrna, all mad about my Tony Vitello best baseball coach in the country comments. Eli says, oh my God, one natty and now Tony is the GOAT. Tim Corbin has 18 straight tournament appearances and 2 titles. How is Tony Vitello better? To which I said, because he's not getting beat by Xavier and High Point in the NCAA tournament. Tim Corbin is a great coach. He's a Hall of Famer. But over the last 4 or 5 years, since the game's changed, Vandy's lost in the regional 3 years in a row. And again, to Xavier, who didn't even get out of the regional. High Point, who didn't even get out of their regional. Plus, when you look at Vandy's team, do you see David Price? So we're not talking about, it's like saying best now. Is Sidney Crosby the best player in the NHL now? No, he's not. He was at one point, but he's not anymore. So Tennessee fans are all worked up because Tennessee fans have one of the best persecution complexes of any fan base in any sport in the country. And they're all worked up because Greg McElroy on his Birmingham radio show, this is WJOX in Birmingham, he and Colt Kublik, who's also on the SEC Network, they host a morning show down there in Birmingham. And Greg McElroy, who I like a lot, by the way, Greg McElroy apparently doesn't like Tony Vitello.
He does. I just wish he didn't have the antics that he does. He's like a WWE character, and it's embarrassing. Seriously. I mean, to be an adult, it's just, I'd be appalled. I really would. I know he wins, and he's great, and the kids love him and all that stuff. That's awesome, but if that was the leader of my organization, I would have to have a little talking to him. I just would. It's just, it's unbelievable. I mean, the guy and the team a couple years ago, I think, lost the national championship, and they had the best team. I think that team was probably better than this team. And, I think they lost it because they didn't harness their emotions. And it's great to lean into that, but man, it's just like I said, it's a tough team to root for. I mean, goodness gracious. I mean, his antics after the game last night were embarrassing. Seriously.
I mean, listen, just because he was a wrestling fan, I don't feel like we have to be mad at him about it. I mean, we know
have some class.
Know what side he
you
was
just
on.
won a national championship. Have some class.
WWF,
like WWE,
WCW.
with all due respect, not class. Just not.
I think he let us know. Like, I mean, you talk about some of the greatest rivalries in the history of sports entertainment. He was a WWF guy. He wasn't a WCW guy.
So that was that Greg McElroy, Colt Kublik morning show. Is this the first time that he's ever seen Tony Vitello? I actually think that Tony Vitello has calmed down over the years. You really saw it, that lemon butt, at the very beginning of Game 2 of this series, when he was out of the dugout and throwing dirt around after like the third pitch of the game. That's the old Tony Vitello. But I actually think Tony Vitello has calmed down. I agree with Greg McElroy. I think the 22 team was better than this team. This team kept its composure. I mean, look, when I had my predictions yesterday and talked about, I thought Edmonton was going to win, and I thought the game was going to get 10 million viewers, and I thought Tennessee was going to win, and I said I think Tony Vitello is going to do something that is incredibly classless. I don't think he did that. Vitello has done those things in the past. I don't think he did that last night. In fact, I think the only thing that was classless last night was after the game, but it was the other coach that I thought was classless. This is Jim Schlossnagle, the head coach at A&M. After the game was over, he was asked, because he's rumored to be the next coach at Texas, he was asked about the Texas job, and listen to how much of a stick up his tush this guy had.
Coach, with respect to the difficult outcome tonight, but with the rumors circulating today about a specific job opening, what do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. And that's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. Let's write that.
Okay. That's classless. Again, the media's job is not to make you feel good. The media's job is to ask questions. That is a very pertinent question. Texas fired their coach the morning of the game. The rumors are Schlossnagle's the guy getting the job. It was the last question. He asked it. To say, that's a very selfish question. To me, that's classless. That's not understanding the job of the media. How hard is it to say, hey, man, I'm here to talk about tonight's game? How hard's that? Not to go write it. And then, as the press conference was concerned, before the guy for the NCAA said, thanks, coach, he got up and stormed off. That's classless. Vitello going into the crowd and jumping up and down with the fans, that's not classless. I'm not sure we'd ever see Nick Saban do that, but that doesn't mean that Tony Vitello is classless. I actually thought that Vitello was going to do something classless last night, and I was a little surprised when he didn't. By the way, when Schlossnagle said, I left my family to take this job, did he actually mean like he left his family? Like his wife and kids were at TCU with him, and they said, Dad, we are not going to College Station. Like, if you take the A&M job, we're divorcing, go get a one-bedroom apartment and go. Like, is that a serious question? Is that what he meant when he said, I left my family to take the A&M job? Because, like, I love the radio. I'm not sure I leave my family because, well, I'm getting offered a better job in Chicago, so I better take it. I don't think I leave my family for that. Plus, if I was getting offered $1 gazillion, don't you think my family would be, yeah, let's go. So maybe he was talking like metaphorically, like his TCU family or something. But I don't know. That stood out to me. One texter says, Jared, have Ian pull the Greg McElroy bit regarding Tony Vitello. It's wild. I'm sorry, did we not just play that?
I thought so.
Is there something else? This texter says, Jared, have Ian pull the Greg McElroy bit. I thought we just played that. Maybe. Was there another Greg McElroy something or another on Tony Vitello?
Not that I'm aware of, but maybe. I'll have to do some research.
I mean, hey. Bob says, can a coach be great without winning a title? And if UT doesn't make the tournament next year, is there a new best coach? Well, I don't know if UT is going to make the tournament or not next year, but I have no information that would tell me that they're not going to make it. So I'm not going to do that if they don't make it next year, chat. As far as can he be great without winning a title? You can be great without winning a title. Dan Marino was great. Can you be the best? I don't think so. 615-737-1025. Trevor joins us next. So Peyton Manning, the official spokesperson for the University of Tennessee. Peyton Manning said something yesterday that I think would make most Vol fans say, yeah! Because apparently anything Peyton says must be gospel. He's the one that convinced everybody John Curry was the man for the job. I do want Trevor's thoughts. We've seen it in baseball, and it's great in baseball. but it'd be much better in football. We'll get to that with Trevor, and we'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 The Game.
Tennessee gets another national championship back on the mountaintop. How does Peyton Manning feel about it?
Oh, extremely excited. I'm excited about all our sports programs, our whole school, right? Our Chancellor Dondy and Randy Boyd, our whole school's doing so good. All our sports are doing good. I'm telling you, this is just the first of several to come, right? Tony's just kind of started it off, but I sat with Coach Heupel and Coach Barnes up watching the game tonight. This is a great example of what our program is, and what Danny White's done has been nothing but exceptional, and there's several to come, I promise you.
Several to come, coming out of the mouth of Peyton Manning, the unofficial spokesperson of the University of Tennessee. Now, let me say this. I am not by any means knocking a baseball national championship. I would love for Louisville to win a baseball national championship, but it's not a football championship. Now, I don't know when Peyton says there's more championships to come. I don't know if Peyton is talking more championships to come from the standpoint of, no, it's not just football, but it's also going to be basketball, or excuse me, not just baseball, but football and basketball and all these others, or if he's saying just more championships in baseball. I don't know. But when Peyton's like, I was there, Coach Heupel, Coach Barnes, there's more championships coming. Danny White's doing a great job. I think he's talking about football. I think he's talking about basketball. Now, it's not like Peyton's going to come out and say, with Rick Barnes as our basketball coach, we're never going to win a national championship, but we'll win a lot of games in the regular season. He's not going to say that. But I do wonder, given how Tony Vitello has taken advantage of the change of the game, with the transfer portal and NIL and everything else, and we see guys like Nick Saban, kind of the old hats, Coach K, they're not interested in NIL and transfer portal anymore. I do wonder if Tennessee has an advantage that maybe transfers over into the other sports. Trevor Maddich joins us on the program now, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters, and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, Trevor, let's start there. Tennessee baseball wins a national championship. 5 years ago, that program was nothing but NIL, transfer portal, and the right coach, and they are at the top of the sport, and they've been there for the last 4 years. Do you think where the game is headed, where college sports is headed, that there is something inherent about Tennessee's fan base, their NIL support, and everything else that could transfer over to football?
I think you can just put a dollar sign on it, and that's what it amounts to. Football, I think, is harder to turn around fast than baseball might be, or even basketball, because it seems to me that in baseball, if you can pull in a couple of good pitchers, a couple of big bats, and then fill in around them with good players, then you can do a lot of things. In football, you got to really have pretty much every position, except maybe guard, your favorite position. Pretty much every position has to be able to hold up. And that's a lot of guys. That's 22 guys plus a kicker and a punter that have to be able to hold up. And so you can't just bring in a few. But every football team has that same problem. And Tennessee has shown that they're competing at the highest levels when it comes to NIL, and also with their preparation for when schools will be able to pay players directly. The NCAA said that that's something that they're trying to get done, where schools can pay minimum of $30,000 for a whole bunch of the players in various sports. They can't do it yet, but they're talking about the possibility of it. And Tennessee is one of those schools that is putting together a nonprofit foundation so that they'll have the infrastructure ready to go. All they have to do is fund it and start writing checks as soon as that becomes available. So that means that Tennessee is very forward-looking when it comes to the single most important aspect of getting top talent into their programs, football, baseball, whatever it's going to be. And that is, how do we channel the most money to the best recruits and transfers?
Do you think Josh Heupel has the potential of as a football coach to be kind of what Tony Vitello has been as a baseball coach, which he's a younger guy. He gets, the current kid and kind of where their minds are at and things like that. He's more adaptive, to the transfer portal and NIL because he's a younger guy. He's not, an old hat. Tim Corbin at Vandy, I don't know if he can make these adjustments. Nick Saban got out because he didn't want to do it anymore. I do wonder, can Josh Heupel be that kind of coach that we've seen the baseball coach at UT be able to become?
He can, Jared, for really three reasons. One is he's a very good salesman. I mean, you believe what he's telling you when you're a recruit or a potential transfer coming in there. He has a terrific ability to develop a sense of family within the program, because the best recruiters will always be your current players. And if the coach is a used car salesman, when he's not there and the players are with the recruits, they'll let him know that things aren't what the coach said. But at Tennessee, those players are telling recruits that it is what the coach said. This is a great place to be, and you want to join us here. And so that's important. That's part of what Coach Heupel is able to infuse into the organization. And then when you look at his offense, I mean, it's exciting. When it's running the way it needs to run, it runs at hyper speed in terms of how fast each play is run after the end of the previous play. It attacks vertically down the field. And if you've got a quarterback that can manage all of that and hit those receivers running deep down the field, the best defenses aren't going to stop you. And we saw that 2 years ago with Hendon Hooker and what they were able to do and the way he was able to drive the ball and run the plays really fast. It just comes back to a two-play sequence that I did a breakdown on SportsCenter about that Tennessee Josh Heupel offense against Alabama, where Tennessee ran a play, tackle was made, and Tennessee ran up to the ball and snapped it like 12 seconds or so after the official blew the whistle on the previous play. Well, at the snap of the ball, half of Alabama's defense was still looking at the sideline, trying to get the defensive play call from their coach for the next play. And off to the offensive right, one of the defensive backs actually had his back to the line of scrimmage as he was looking at the coaches on his sideline trying to get the play call. The ball was snapped. That defender with his back to the line of scrimmage turned around just in time to see the Tennessee receiver go right past him for a deep touchdown pass, right? This is the kind of thing that Josh Heupel does, and when he's got a quarterback that can manage the whole thing, it's exciting. And that excitement, to go with the ability to sell that excitement and the sense of camaraderie and culture that he's able to build in the program, will draw top talent if the money's there. And right now, Tennessee is showing that they can compete with anybody with the money.
You know, it's funny you bring that up. Trevor's with us. I talked to a Power 5 coach last year, and they are not SEC, but a Power 5 coach. And they told me, they said, look, coaching at our school in the Power 5 is like coaching the Cincinnati Reds. And the SEC, the LSUs, the Alabamas, the Tennessees, the Georgias, that they're the Yankees. We do not have the resources at this Power 5 school that those schools have. And I think, again, in today's era, we're talking about the NIL money. LSU won the title in women's basketball and baseball last year. You know, we see the SEC dominates outside of Caitlin Clark in women's basketball with Dawn Staley at South Carolina and what they've done. And I'm starting to wonder, you know, LSU won the title last year. Ole Miss won the title the year before that. Mississippi State won the year before that. I'm starting to wonder, Trevor, when are we going to see that become football, where more than half of the College World Series field was SEC teams? When is that going to be happening in men's basketball, where the SEC dominates, if it really is a money thing? Or are these sports different than what's possible in football, where Michigan, Texas, Washington, Oregon, those teams are still good?
Well, I think, like we talked about it before, the advantage that you have in sports with fewer players is that just a handful of ringers that you can bring in can make a massive difference, where a handful of ringers in football can't make a difference if the rest of the team around them aren't good enough. I look at Colorado last year as an example. Almost the entire team was new, between freshmen and transfers. And some of those guys were phenomenal. Shedeur Sanders at quarterback, I think he's outstanding. You know, you've got other players on that team that were at the highest level.
Yeah, Travis Hunter.
He was another Heisman Trophy candidate because, he was a starter on defense, a starter on offense, and he was one of the best in the country at each of those two positions, at defensive back and wide receiver. This is Hunter. And they had other guys. The problem was that they had too many holes on the offensive line and on the defensive line. And so for all the high-end talent they brought in 1 year in football, there were just too many other leaks in the boat to be able to get anything done with. But once again, every team has the same advantages of the same problems. And so, I think that any team can become a dynasty, at least for a while. Alabama wasn't very good. They were pretty mediocre before Nick Saban got there, right? Georgia was quite good, 10-win seasons, but that's about it under Mark Richt until Kirby Smart got there. And they're in the midst of their dynasty now. Clemson was mildly interesting until Dabo Swinney got there. Took them a decade to really build it up to where they were a dynasty for a while, and now they're kind of knocking at the door to try to get there again, right? And so if they can do it, you can do it. The difference is that now the way you do it is different from how those coaches did it just a few years ago. Now, money is the biggest way that you're going to get the top recruits there, and increased money is the way that you're going to keep them there, because the transfer portal will allow them to become a free agent as many times as they can get away with it.
So I have another thought off of that I want to get to. And I also have a hot take that you don't know yet, Trevor. You don't know it. Right. I haven't told it to you. I want to put it on you, And I want your opinion. We'll do it next. Trevor Maddich is with us, again, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters, and ESPN Bet Sportsbook, here on the Stillman and Company program. Join us this July 4th at the 18th Annual Music City Hot Chicken Festival at East Park. It's a spectacular day packed with live music, contests, and, of course, hot chicken. It's free, so bring the whole family. Discover more at hotchickenfestival.com.
Coach, with respect to the difficult outcome tonight, but with the rumors circulating today about a specific job opening, what do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But my I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. And that's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. Let's write that.
That was Jim Schlossnagle, the head coach at Texas A&M, yesterday asked about the Texas job. And I thought that was pretty classless to get on the reporter. Everybody's talking about it. And so the Houston Chronicle is reporting that Schlossnagle today is deciding between A&M and Texas, and he's going to meet with the A&M brass today before making his decision. Trevor Matich is with us, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters, and ESPN Bet Sportsbook. So, Trevor, here's my hot take for you, because you know I'm not going to ask you your thoughts on the A&M baseball coach going to Texas as far as, you know, what he should do or shouldn't do. But here's what I'm going to ask you. Do you remember how mad A&M was that Texas got let into the SEC?
Oh yeah, they were quite unhappy about that.
And if you remember, A&M joined the SEC because they were mad about Texas getting the Longhorn Network. That's what led to A&M saying, oh, you're going to give Texas the Longhorn Network. They're going to get more money. We're out of here. We're going to go to a conference that, you know, will treat us as equal with everybody else. We're not going to be little brother to Texas. So A&M was the one school that fought like hell to keep Texas out of the SEC. And ultimately, A&M had to suck it up. And Greg Sankey said, too bad. I think Greg Sankey owes it to A&M to tell Texas, you can't hire the A&M baseball coach. That I understand, you know, it's a dog-eat-dog world out there, but you're joining our conference. They're already a member. You can't come in immediately on your way in and little brother A&M by taking their baseball coach who just went to the national championship game. If you were Greg Sankey, would you do the same, or do you think that that's unfair for Sankey to do?
If I'm Greg Sankey, I wouldn't touch it. You know, I'd let it play out. I don't know if he has the authority contractually to be able to dictate something like that.
Oh, but you know the commissioner, if he wants it, he can get it done.
Yeah, well, maybe so. Either way, I don't know that that's the hill he wants to fight on, you know, over where a baseball coach is going to be. Yes, Texas A&M did not want Texas in the SEC. A&M loved being in the best conference in America, playing at the highest level in America, and Texas didn't. A&M was not playing Texas in football. And even now that they will be playing again, A&M, at least for the time being, has announced they're not going to have the bonfire, you know, before the game. That's for the game that they normally would have before that big rivalry matchup. They're doing the best they can to make it seem like, yeah, well, whatever, Texas, whatever, we don't care about them. But Texas is what they care about more than anything other than themselves. And so if their baseball coach goes to Texas, regardless of whether or not he wins in Austin, it is the ultimate thumb in the eye for A&M from the Longhorns in the first year of Texas being in the SEC. I would love to see it happen just as a fan of rivalries, because how this would amp up what's already an incredibly bitter rivalry between those two schools.
I mean, I think this coach may end up with $10 million because, I mean, you know, baseball coaches now are making, you know, close to $2 million. And Tony Vitello is going to sign, you know, for a probably $3 million contract at Tennessee. They're never going to make that back. Like, there is women's basketball and baseball do not make money in college, especially if you're paying the coach. So they're never going to make that back. But you know A&M as well as I do. If Texas is offering this coach, let's say $3 million, if they're offering him $3 million, A&M's going to offer him $4 million. A&M will not get beaten on money when it comes to the coach. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he's meeting with the A&M brass and saying, look, guys, you know, Texas, they have big pockets. They're offering me $3 million or they're offering me 2.5, and A&M saying, we'll beat it. And he ends up making a fortune. Because we talk about bidding wars, Trev. Even though it's baseball, even though whoever ends up getting the coach is going to lose money on this deal, it would not surprise me to see Texas and A&M get in a public bidding war over a baseball coach.
Sure, or maybe just a fake bidding war, because a lot of times agents will use this kind of a scenario just to get more money for their client where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And the coach loves that because it doesn't just add to his own compensation. He can pay more for his assistant coaches. He can get upgrade commitments for his facilities. There's all kinds of things that he's able to do with this kind of. Remember Nick Saban of Alabama? I think it was when Mac Brown retired at Texas.
Yeah.
It was floated out there that Saban might be the next coach at Texas.
You remember Terry Saban's looking at property in Austin.
Oh man! And then Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, when Arkansas came open, there was the thought that he might go to Arkansas. And all this just it's agent play is what it amounts to. It's really fun. But when it comes down to it, you're right that A&M will not be outspent by anybody because nobody has more money than A&M. But sometimes if he does go to Texas, then you'll know it probably wasn't the money. It probably was something to do with the commitment to the program that Texas was able to do that maybe A&M didn't even know about to be able to match.
Trevor Matich is with us. We're talking about NIL and kind of where the game's headed. And, Nick Saban, I was talking about how a lot of times we try to convince ourselves for our team that we may not have Nick Saban as coach, but we've got a coach that's as good, or we've got a quarterback that's as good. Tony Khan, whose dad owns the Jags, was on our show earlier today, and he was saying, look, we think Trevor Lawrence is the best young quarterback in the NFL. I don't agree with that, but that's his opinion. But I do wonder, as Vol fans look at their baseball coach, who I think is the best coach in America, and we know Josh Heupel's a good coach, and we know Tennessee is absolutely committed to winning, just like LSU, just like Georgia, just like Auburn, just like everybody else. Kirby Smart has become the new Nick Saban in the SEC. But is it possible, where the money matters, Trevor, is it possible to be Nick Saban in today's college football? To have the dominance in recruiting that Nick Saban had for 15 years at Alabama in today's college football with NIL and the transfer portal?
That's one of the things that we'll have to wait to find out. Because the way Nick Saban was one of the ways that he was so dominant was that he was able to convince high school recruits that their best chance to get to the NFL was to come to Alabama, get into that strength and conditioning program, be coached by those coaches, and it's a launching point for the NFL. Well, nowadays, you don't need to go to the NFL to make a whole lot of money, and most players aren't going to the NFL anyway. Now it's NIL, not NFL. And so the question becomes, can there be sustained dominance in NIL or direct payment of players the way that Nick Saban had sustained dominance with high school recruits, with the selling point being pipeline to the NFL? I don't know that yet. It just depends on the way NIL ends up working out. I mean, we don't even know what the final version of NIL is going to be. Right now it's collectives and outside boosters, but the courts are involved right now. There are court cases that the AG Attorney Generals of Tennessee and Virginia are brought against the NCAA for illegal restraint of trade for imposing NIL rules on the current system, which everybody agrees is a nightmare. And so we don't know what it's going to look like. But in order for there to be that kind of a dynasty again in college football, it's going to have to be one of NIL money. And we keep coming back to this over the course of this half hour, Jared, but really that's where the dominance needs to be. It won't be one team that'll dominate. It'll be a handful of teams that will dominate. But what that domination looks like, other than quantity of money, remains to be seen, because we don't even know what the final package is going to look like once the courts are done with everything.
Trevor Matich, last one for you on the program. Last night at the Matich household, did Trevor and Dana watch A, college baseball, B, Game 7 of the Cup Final, or C, 90 Day Fiancé?
D. I was recovering. She's at the beach right now, so she's having a fun. I am home. She's at the beach, but I didn't watch any of the above. I was still recovering from that WNBA game between the Fever and the Sky, where Chicago won that game at the very end by 1 point. That was one of the most electrifying basketball games at any level, any gender that I have ever seen. I mean, the rivalry, the talent, the aggression. Kennedy Carter for Chicago is, when she gets the ball in her hands, you can't take your eyes off her because she's going to do something big and strong and skillful no matter what happens. That whole Chicago Sky, Indiana Fever game, to me, was just the epitome of what a game experience should be. So I didn't see anything last night. I was too busy reveling in how much I enjoyed that WNBA game. Can you believe that?
What drove you to the WNBA? Was it Caitlin Clark? What drove you to the WNBA game?
Well, it was the rivalry, because all you hear about is Caitlin Clark and everybody hates her. I'm like, okay, well, fine then. I saw on YouTube some of the hits that she took, people trying to beat her up and stuff like that. I saw them, and for the most part, it's like, it's professional sport. It's physical. You got to be able to handle that, and she is handling that. But I wanted to see the rivalry, but I hadn't really watched it from a standpoint of, let me look at all these athletes on the floor beyond just the rivalry and beyond the TMZ aspect of it. And when I did, I mean, Aaliyah Brown I think that's right, Brown, the interior player for Indiana, Aaliyah Boston. She's phenomenal. Angel Reese is incredible. Cardozo for Chicago, she's like 6'7", and she can move. And just the way that they put things together added to the TMZ effect, waiting to see if someone was going to take a cheap shot at somebody else, and nobody did. Everybody stayed professional in this game. I was just really impressed with the skill, because in the NBA a lot of times you just either give the ball to your three-point shooter or give the ball to your big guy down and everybody else clear out and just play that way. They were running back doors, give and go, pick and roll, all kinds of variations of these things that old school basketball fans would really appreciate. And I just enjoyed the heck out of it.
Fascinating. Trevor Maddich, as always, on our program. Trev, great stuff. Appreciate you, bud.
Thanks, Jared.
Ian, were you surprised? WNBA for Trev. Was not counting on that. That one surprised me. I mean,
well,
look,
Trevor's a sports fan.
I mean, he's like all in on the Trevor Maddich is all in on the WNBA.
He mentioned it to me before he came on. We were just kind of chatting. I was just like, yeah, we've been talking about the baseball was good last night and the hockey game 7 was good last night. And he was like, I watched that WNBA game the other day and it was awesome. So
you know that Caitlin Clark games are averaging more viewers than Sunday Night Baseball right now?
I mean, I guess I buy it. Sure.
Unbelievable. 615-737-1025. The Florida Panthers are your Stanley Cup champions. Do the Florida Panthers give us hope for the Predators? You can make that argument. We'll get to that coming up next. Let's talk Twice Daily. I love Twice Daily. I go to Twice Daily all the time. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every single visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join the Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discount savings, enter the sweepstakes, and so much more. We are celebrating summer at Twice Daily with the Chicken Salad Summer at Twice Daily. They've made 2 new additions to their menu, their flaky chicken salad croissant and their tasty chicken salad wrap. Plus, they're made fresh in-house and made to order just the way you like it. And since it's summer, don't forget to grab an ice-cold drink, too. You can go download the Twice Daily app to order ahead or available now through the made-to-order kiosk. Twice Daily. What are you craving? Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Congratulations to the Florida Panthers, the champions, in Game 7 last night. Ian, we have a rating.
Okay, let's hear it.
According to ESPN, 7.7 million viewers for last night's Game 7. I got to tell you, I think it's a bad number.
Really?
And they'll tell you it's good. Here's what ESPN's saying. Most viewed non-original 6 audience on record. Most viewed non-original 6. The record this century, now there are games in the 70s, Montreal and New York and Boston, and like when CBS had hockey, which I don't even know when CBS had hockey. There are games that, from the 70s that were doing 10 million viewers plus. This century, Bruins Blues 2019 Game 7 is the pinnacle, which drew, I believe, 8.7 million viewers. So they got 1 million less than the highest game this century. That's not, I expected them to surpass that. And the argument will be, well, there was a Canadian team in that, and I get it. I think the team that takes away from the viewership more than the Canadian team, I think it's the Panthers. I was saying this when they were playing in the conference final against the Rangers, and I thought to myself, the NFL can't dictate, let's just get the Cowboys and Tom Brady in the Super Bowl. Because if you had a Patriots-Cowboys Super Bowl, you'd get 70 million viewers. Can't do that. The best team has to go. And if it ends up being Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, then so be it. It's Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville. You can't let the Yankees get into the World Series over the Baltimore Orioles because the Yankees will draw a bigger audience. But I was thinking, if it's the Rangers versus McDavid, it'll be huge. Because everybody who makes programming decisions lives in New York City. And thus, they think that things that happen in New York City matter to all of us, which they do not. I don't care about the Knicks. Do you? And I'm not talking to you, Ian, because I know you care about the Knicks because you grew up a Knicks fan. But talking to everybody else, do you care about the Knicks? No, you do not care about the Knicks. So there would have been all this publicity, the whole series for Rangers McDavid. So I think it's Florida that kind of brought the number down more so than I think it was a Canadian team.
I could buy that.
And they're going to sell this as it's great. ESPN's going to say it's great. The NHL's going to say it's great. I thought this was going to get 10 million viewers. I am fascinated to see what the viewership for the baseball is. Because baseball last year with LSU and Wake Forest, and this was a great baseball game, right down to the wire in the 9th inning. Baseball last year did 3.5 million viewers. I am fascinated to see what the viewership for the baseball was. And if that hurt the NHL. Fascinated by it. And so, again, they're going to celebrate this number, and maybe I'm wrong. I really thought last night was going to get into the 10 million viewers. I really thought last night. And then when the game was close and the game was fun and the game was exciting, I'm like, this is going to be big time for hockey. And it's good, but I'm not sure it's great. Stephen A. Smith was talking about how much fun he had at the game last night. It's very important. I know that a lot of people don't like Stephen A. Smith, and I'm starting to get sick of Stephen A. Smith myself. By the way, Ian, did you see how much money Stephen A. Smith turned down?
Was it 20-something mil?
18.
18. I thought it was around. I thought I saw a report of like 25 or something like that.
He wants 25.
Okay.
He turned down $18 million a year. If I was ESPN, I'd say, okay, go on, Stephen A., because we can be ESPN. We've survived without Dan Patrick, without Keith Olbermann, without Kenny Mayne, without Colin Cowherd, without Chris Berman. We'll be okay without you. But that's a different discussion. I do think it's important to get a guy like Stephen A., who is the lead guy on that channel, behind the NHL. I think it's very important. I also think it's important to get Stephen A., who is not only the lead guy at ESPN, but he is the lead African-American at ESPN, to get him behind the NHL because, again, you're trying to grow the game into different communities and things like that. And as Stephen A. said yesterday on the show, it is a big deal. You know, I thought it was a big deal when he was talking about, look at us, you know, Shannon and PK and him, and he's like, 3 black guys talking about hockey. I'm like, I do think that that is a big deal as far as growing the game and everything else is concerned. But I just don't think this number's good enough. And I was thinking, too, I'm like, knowing how important Stephen A. Smith is, knowing how important those guys are, McAfee's into hockey. He's a Penguins fan. You know, he's into it. I would tell the Rangers, like, hey, you guys need to get in good with Stephen A. Get him interested. Get him behind the Rangers because he's a New York guy. Get him into it and see what happens. That's just my opinion. But I thought the number tonight was going to be 10 million. I still think last night was a great game. I still think last night was a great night for hockey. I still think hockey is on the ascent in this country, where the NBA is on the decline in this country. But I'm disappointed. ESPN's arguing that it's up 182% versus last year's Stanley Cup Final clincher. I mean, I don't even remember. I mean, I know that Vegas won the Cup last year. I don't even remember last year's Stanley Cup Final. According to ESPN, Oilers-Panthers Game 7 draws the largest non-original 6 audience on record and is most viewed NHL game since 2019's Game 7. That's the game that, of course, got 8.7 or 8.9 million viewers or whatever it is. 2024 Stanley Cup Final averaged 4.2 million viewers and 1.5 million in the 18 to 49 demographic, up 58 and 43% over last year's Stanley Cup Final. And the 2024 Stanley Cup playoffs on ESPN's platforms averaged 1.8 million viewers, up 60% versus last year and 14 over 2022. Who was 22? Colorado and I'm drawing a blank. Who to call? Tampa. I thought hockey could have done better. I think hockey could have done better. I'm a little disappointed. For whatever it's worth. Phone lines are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Kevin wants to weigh in on this. Thank you for calling and waiting. What's up, Kevin?
Jared, the experts about sports viewership always talk about at some point, especially if you're in the big media markets like New York and LA and wherever else, these potential viewers are doing other things. And they're not sitting around on their butts waiting for some screamer on a TV show like Stephen A. Smith or the other guys or some babe who's dressed up to the nines and they go, wow, we should look at that sport. Some of them are like that. But my point is, I think hockey is a wonderful viewer sport. I can't go to the stadiums anymore because they're so incredibly loud. But I watched that game last night. It was a great game. Did I care that it wasn't a team from one of the big markets?
What does this have to do with Stephen A. Smith?
No. Well, you were saying Stephen A. Smith deserves $18 million because
I did not say that. I said that if he doesn't take that, which they offered, thank you, Kevin, if he doesn't take that, which they offered, I wouldn't offer him more money. That's what I said. In fact, I don't even think he's worth the $18 million. I agree. The sports are what people watch. Now, as far as the game, it's a good game. 615-737-1025. Okay. This was the original topic I teased before the number came out. Do the Florida Panthers give us hope for the Predators? There's an argument to be made that they do. I'll explain. We'll do that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
10 seconds left. 2-1 Panthers. A dream 30 years in the making is a reality. The Florida Panthers have won the Stanley Cup. Lord Stanley is coming home. You always will have a place in South Florida. Oh, my God. The Panthers have won the Stanley Cup for the first time in franchise history. Yeah! Start the celebration, South Florida. The Panthers have done it. Stanley Cup champions!
Wow. Florida Panthers Radio Network last night. Could you ever imagine Hal Gill doing that? And we think Hal's a homer.
I was just
My
thinking that.
God.
I was just like, I wonder what it would sound like. Like Jay Moore, I can't, he's been doing a lot of the home games. I can't really picture that. The only one I could have pictured a little bit, Brent Peterson, coach, he kind of would have probably got a little emotional.
Yeah, but I don't think he would have been like that.
He wouldn't have been like that, no.
I mean, I don't even think I'd be like that in my seats. And I want the Predators to win the Cup more than anything. I'll never forget when they lost that Game 7 to Winnipeg. And I was just thinking, like, as I was depressed as a fan sitting there in the seats, I was also thinking to myself at the same time, I'm like, man, this is going to crush our ratings. Like, if they win this game, that's 2 weeks of humongous ratings. And this is what I was thinking back in 2018. But, wow, that was a call last night. So I asked this question. Do the Florida Panthers give us hope for the Nashville Predators that Big Swing Barry Trotz can build a Cup contender and a Cup winner, because that's what this really is about, winning the Cup, that he can build a Cup winner without the one thing we know they're not going to have. They are never going to have the number one pick in a draft that ends up being Macklin Celebrini, Connor Bedard, Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Sidney Crosby. They're never going to have that pick. Ian, would you agree with me that as long as Barry Trotz is a general manager, they're never going to have that pick?
Yeah, seems unlikely.
So just forget about it. So take that out.
Especially if they bring Saros back.
Taves and Kane, can't have them. Well, the Florida Panthers, now they did have Aaron Ekblad at number 1 and Alexander Barkov at number 2. And those are both good players, especially Barkov. But I wouldn't say that the combination of the two are necessarily that much better than Yossi and Forsberg. Would you agree with me on that, Ian?
Which combo, I'm sorry?
Barkov and Ekblad?
They're pretty similar, yeah.
Okay.
Yossi's probably a little bit better than Ekblad, and Barkov's probably a little bit better than Forsberg. Kind of evens out.
Okay. So you've got the two things that they got at the top of the draft, which, again, Barkov and Ekblad, 1 and 2, and Yossi and Forsberg you have.
Barkov plays center. It's maybe your only little caveat there, but
he's not the big boy forward of that team. Matthew Tkachuk is the big boy forward of that team, and they didn't draft him.
I love Barkov, though.
So when you look at the Florida Panther team, the way they were built was not necessarily through the draft. It was not landing a Connor McDavid. It was not landing a Sidney Crosby and an Evgeny Malkin. It was free agency and trades. I mean, they traded for Matthew Tkachuk. They traded for Sam Reinhart. They traded for a good handful of their guys. They signed Carter Verhaeghe as a free agent from Tampa. I love Verhaeghe. Every time the Predators play Florida, he scores, and he scored last night to get it going. He's a great player. So they built this thing through free agency. And I remember all the free agent talks we did over the years, talking about, Matt Duchene, if they can get him. And we never said, Carter Verhaeghe, if they could get him. So what the Panthers did is they kind of built this thing slowly, adding the right pieces. Kulikov, he's been around. Those kind of players. So when I look at the Predators right now, I would say the Predators have 6 players. Take the goalie out of it. 6 players that make me feel like, okay, if the Predators win the Cup, these guys can be on it. Yossi, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Evangelista, Nyquist, although probably not on the first line, and Colton Sissons. And honestly, you could have Sissons one way or another. I put him on there, take him off, doesn't matter to me. Everybody else either needs to be on the fourth line, and that includes Tommy Novak, or not on the team. So Novak, Fabro, those kind of players. Like, if you tell me that Dante Fabro is the fifth defenseman of this team, I can live with it. If you tell me that you're going to play Dante Fabro on the top four, I'm not interested. Again, you got to the Cup with PK Subban, Roman Josi, Matthias Ekholm, and Ryan Ellis as your top four. And if Shea Weber is a first ballot Hall of Famer, all three of those guys minus Ellis should be in the Hall of Fame. I mean, I'm serious. I think Matthias Ekholm might be putting together a Hall of Fame career if Shea Weber is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So again, Josi, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Evangelista, Nyquist, and Sissons. So I need 5 more forwards because I'm not worried about the fourth line. And I need 3 more defensemen that, again, are top 4D. I am going, and you know I hate doing this when it comes to prospects, but I am going to count Tanner Molendyk as one of the defensemen. I know I hate doing this because the second that you start to get excited about a Preds prospect, it's Eeli Tolvanen, the Dante Fabro. It's like, they end up not being that good, but I'm going to give Molendyk that check mark. So what that means is I now need 2 more defensemen and I need 5 more forwards. So that's 7 pieces via the draft and free agency and trades. And remember, for the sake of this discussion, you can't use Soros to acquire any of those pieces because they're going to re-sign him. I think it's doable. They got all this cap space. They've got assets to trade. I was surprised today they traded a second-round pick, the Tampa second-rounder they got from McDonough, for a 19-year-old defenseman who was the 12th rated prospect, according to The Athletic, with the Detroit Red Wings. And, I read the guy's scouting report at The Athletic on it, and as I read through the scouting report, I saw at the bottom they were like, he could be a third-pair defenseman in the NHL. And I'm like, Barry's not trading a second-round pick for a guy who could be a third-pair defenseman in a couple of years, is he? I don't know. Which makes me think there may be a second move there. But I absolutely think they're going to sign at least 2 free agents. They're going to sign a free agent to replace McDonough. Think about a Pesci. They're going to sign a defenseman. So that means that I'll only need another defenseman, and then I'll need 5 forwards. And Barry said yesterday on the program, they're in the mix for some of these big names. Marner, Natchez, Zegras. I don't know if if any of them are realistic. Natchez probably seems the most realistic to me, but I don't know how you get him in a trade. I don't know if you have those kind of assets. But the kind of guys I love on the Florida Panthers are guys you can get. The guys I love on the Edmonton Oilers, you can't get them. Ekholm. But, you can't go out and get Leon Draisaitl or Connor McDavid. Those are the 2 guys I love. Can't get them.
Draisaitl's about to be a free agent.
He's not going to be a free agent. He's going to sign a contract.
So they'll have to pay him a lot.
Well, I heard Willie today make a comment with Vengen, and Willie was like, they got a lot of decisions. Maybe McDavid won't win the Cup in Edmonton. I'm like, I can promise you of all the decisions that they make, not keeping Connor McDavid is not one of them. Now, McDavid may make a decision that he doesn't want to stay in Edmonton. I don't think he'd make that decision, but he may. But that's different than Edmonton. If Edmonton had to give Connor McDavid 90% of the cap, they'd do it. And I'd do it too if I were them. So,
but what about Draisaitl?
They're going to give Draisaitl whatever he wants.
I tend to agree, but
they're going to give Draisaitl probably $12 million.
How much?
12.
Yeah.
They're probably going to give him 8 over 12 with a full no move. That's just, and I'd give it to him too. But you can't get those guys. But the guys I love on the Panthers, Sam Reinhart was a first-round pick and a prospect. You got first-round picks. You've got prospects. Carter Verhaeghe was a free agent signing. You've got cap space to sign. There will be guys that are out there. Hell, Gus Nyquist was a guy that they signed, and he's been great with the Predators. So while they still need to find the big boy, and Barry said yesterday on the show that they're in on the big names, I do wonder if the Florida Panthers and the way they're built and the lack of the McDavid and the lack of the Bedard and the lack of the, I do wonder if that gives us hope that Barry Trotz can build it this way. 615-737-1025. We're to your phones on that. Plus, here's the other thing. I have been a staunch detractor of the goalie, UC Saros, after the Vancouver series. And I have used Vegas and Colorado as examples of teams that do not pay goalies. Well, a $10 million goalie won the cup last night and stood on his head. So how does that factor into our discussion? We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Speaking of the Predators, be sure to join us on Friday. That's right. This Friday, the Predators will have the NHL watch party at Draft Picks Restaurant Bar inside of the Ford Ice Center Bellevue at 6 p.m. Celebrate the newest members of Smashville while enjoying food and drink specials, door prizes, games hosted by Wayne D, and a live broadcast from Max Hers, 102.5 The Game. More details at NashvillePredators.com/draft.
see no reason to draw a line in the sand, and I'm sure they don't as well.
Barry Trotz is going to re-sign UC Saros unless Barry is an excellent bluffer. I think he's made it pretty clear through his postseason press conference, him on the show with us multiple times. It sounds like he's going to re-sign Saros. But to the Boo-Hoo Saros crew, they did get a nugget. I did not hear Willie gloating about this today, but I didn't listen to all the midday show. But finally, a goalie who matters won the cup last night in Sergei Bobrovsky.
You were ready to give it to Skinner.
Well, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, Skinner outplayed Bobrovsky in the cup final. Now, he didn't outplay him last night, and Skinner was fine last night, but he did outplay him in the cup final. He had like a .909 save percentage, and Bobby was, .899 or .889 or whatever it was. But Bobrovsky is a $10 million goalie. He is when we talk about the high-end goalies, like Linus Ullmark got traded yesterday, and I know that he won the Vezina last year, but he's not as good as Saros. Bobrovsky's kind of in that top discussion, and Saros is in that group too. So does Bobrovsky, bucking the trend of paying goalies winning the cup, does it make it more acceptable for the people like me and you that after the Vancouver series, after the Vancouver series, I was like, I just don't think Saros can get it done. I just don't think he can't win me playoff games, and I need the money so I can go out. Somebody texted in when I said, hey, I need to add 5 forwards and I need to add 2 defensemen, and said, Zadorov, Brady Shea, Gensel, Kane, Stamkos, Henrique, and Kuznetsov. I'm sorry, do I have $1 trillion to spend? Sign Stamkos, Kane, and Gensel? I mean, I know that Stamkos and Kane it's not 2017, but those guys are still going to want some real money. But I actually looked at the stats. From age 22 to 28, which was Bobrovsky's first year at age 22 in the NHL, and where Saros is now, which is 28 years old. Bobrovsky played 330 games. Saros played 328. So, Ian, I feel like this is a fair comparison.
Fair with the games played, sure.
I mean, they're playing the same amount. Bobrovsky won 181 games. Saros has won 172.
Pretty close.
Roughly the same. Saros has 22 shutouts. Bobrovsky has 19. Pretty close.
Yep.
GAA, goals against. Bobrovsky, 2.45. Saros, 2.64.
Pretty close.
I mean, over a 300-game sample size, is that close?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Okay. Save percentage. Bobby, 920. Saros, 917.
Yeah, pretty close.
Now, Bobrovsky had 2 Vezinas and 2 All-Star appearances at that point. Obviously, Saros has neither. And in the playoffs, when Bobrovsky was in Columbus, which was through his age 30 season, because he got some time with Philadelphia, I think when Laviolette was the coach. He got some time there, but he was young and didn't play much. And it's kind of like how Saros played a little bit when Lavi would pull Pekka in some of these playoff games. So, in the starts in Columbus, Bobrovsky won 41% of his games. He was 11-16, 908 save percentage. Saros has won 31% of his games. 5 of a total 16. It's not very good. But Saros, 50% quality starts. Bobrovsky, 37. I'd say they're comparable. Again, the 2 Vezinas probably would lean the scale at that point to Bobrovsky, but I would argue that those numbers say, again, we're talking 328 games for Saros, 330 for Bobrovsky. That's the same. And they basically 920 save percentage, 917. 245 GAA, 264. It's the same. They allow 2.5 goals a game. They stop about, again, 92% of the shots they face. So does this change the discussion? Does Bobrovsky winning the cup, after we have bitched about how Aiden Hill won the cup, and Darcy Kemper won the cup, and Matt Murray won the cup 2 years in a row, and he's not even good anymore, Does it change the discussion? For me, maybe a little. Now, I've been staunchly anti-Saros since the Vancouver series, and I know time heals all wounds. And I'm wondering if as I get away from it, I'm starting to say, hey, you know what? Saros is a known commodity. His stats are very, very similar to Bobrovsky. Bobrovsky's going to make more money than Saros is going to command on his next deal, and that is with the cap, which is real in hockey. That is with the cap going up. And yet, I still just don't value goaltending that much. I still just don't value it. But Bobrovsky's a good argument, and he did win the Cup last night, and he did stand on his head. And even though he got outplayed by Shesterkin and he got outplayed by Skinner in the Cup final, he still is a big reason why they won. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. One texter says, it sounds great to say Nashville can build a winner the same way Florida did, but with Trott's apparent aversion to big long-term deals, you're not going to get elite players if you're not giving out term. Well, let me say this. Carter Verhaeghe signed in 2021. Like for that 21 COVID season was Verhaeghe's first year. Verhaeghe is a free agent after next year. So Verhaeghe didn't sign in a 7-year contract. Those are the kind of free agents Barry Trotz needs to go get. Ryan O'Reilly is a great example of the kind of free agent Barry Trotz needs to be targeting. A good, solid, dependable veteran who's still got some years left, and he signed him for 4 years. Those are the kind of players I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the superstar is going to come from a trade. It's going to be getting a guy like Natchez or Marner or Zegras and a guy who has the potential to be a great player but hasn't done it, and you unlock it. But if you miss on that trade, then you're screwed. And, you know, if you feel like you have to make the trade, you may trade for a guy who's not that good, and then somebody the next year comes around who might be that good. Alex from Franklin says, Jared, should the Predators go for Brady Tkachuk, who's better than Matthew this year or next year when he's a free agent? I think Robbie Stanley suggested it, and he tweets back in or texts back in and says Brady Tkachuk. So the Ottawa Senators, there have been a lot of rumors about Brady Tkachuk over the years, or over the last year, about Ottawa. And Ottawa's general manager, I think Elliott reported this, Ottawa's general manager told Elliott, these people need to stop talking about Brady Tkachuk because we're going to re-sign him. And I have not heard of Brady Tkachuk's unhappiness in Calgary. That being said, until Brady Tkachuk signs a deal, Brady Tkachuk is very much a part of the discussion, and they are American. And again, when you play in Canada, you're getting taxed at 52%. You're getting in Nashville, you ain't getting taxed. There is a big difference there.
Well, Ottawa has been in a little bit of a, I don't want to call it a tailspin, but somewhat, and just kind of stalled out. They have some good players.
They've sucked for a long time.
And, you know, Brady Tkachuk is getting restless.
Remember when they played the Predators and Willie was like, no, I know this team stinks, but like their record stinks, but they're not that bad.
They have some high-end skill guys, yeah.
Is Shabbat still there?
Yeah.
Oh, I love him. When I talk about wanting one of the 4 D-men, I want Thomas Shabbat. That's who I want. Can you imagine Shabbat on a second pair, Yossi on the first pair? Oh.
That'd be nice.
Don't tempt me with a good time. Texter says that Dave Pagnotta reported. Now, look, Dave Pagnotta, I'm convinced, is like Jason La Canfora. He doesn't know anything, but we'll roll with it. Dave Pagnotta says the Natchez rumors, apparently the Preds have the inside track, but the Hurricanes want a larger deal, including Natchez and Saros, so it might end up being nothing if they re-sign Saros. Who is the goalie in Carolina right now?
Well, they had Freddie Anderson, the veteran who's been around Toronto and a few teams. He was banged up. He had concussion issues. They were rolling with this young kid, Kochetkov or something like that, and that's about it. I mean, they had, who's the guy? Was it Ronta? I think as a backup for at one point.
He sucks.
And so they don't really have much of a goalie right now.
So they're going to want Saros.
Maybe.
would they take Askarov? Because if you re-sign Saros,
They probably want more of a win now guy.
and if Barry says he's going to give Saros trade protection, then you have to trade Askarov. As far as I'm concerned. But Natchez, that's a guy who's a very, very good young player. That's the kind of guy that you trade for, and then you hope he explodes. And that does happen across the league.
Yeah, I mean, they have Freddie Anderson, who's under contract at $3.4 million for next year, and they have Kochetkov, who's, a youngster, 25, under $2 million for $2 million next year.
I could see them say, I just don't know if, you call on Natchez and they say, hey, we want Saros in return. I don't see Barry, the way he's talking on this show, I don't see Barry going through with that.
Seems
and so
unlikely,
then it sounds
but-
like it's a non-starter unless they would want Askarov as part of the deal.
Well, I do wonder, just what we've been seeing as far as goalie trades, and the lack of return, if that's kind of forcing Trotz's hand. As in, hey, we know Saros is more valuable than or we think he's more valuable than what these teams are offering, so I can't trade him for that, so I don't have much of an option.
Well, but if it's part of a deal for Natchez, that does make a difference.
Sure, but yeah,
That's if Natchez wants to be here.
Yeah, and they're going to want more than just Saros.
No, I think that when it comes to Natchez, they're going to want – my guess is Natchez would probably be – and I heard somebody reported that they want, now players. That they want a hockey trade. They're in
win now mode.
It's going to start at Evangelista. Is probably where they're starting. And it's not just Evangelista.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking Evangelista, then throw in another mid-level prospect who's probably not that good, but they can sell it to their fans like Tomasino. So Evangelista, Tomasino, a first-round pick, and they're probably going to want Askarov. And that is a lot. For a guy who, again, Natchez is a really solid young player, but is he a great player? And that's the decision they have to make. 615-737-1025 is our phone number on the program. I started today. I'm happy for UT fans that UT won the baseball championship, but now I'm thrilled. And I'll explain why. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Coach, with respect to the difficult outcome tonight, but with the rumors circulating today about a specific job opening, what do you have to say about your future in Aggieland?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty selfish of you to ask me that question, to be honest with you. But I left my family to be the coach at Texas A&M. I took the job at Texas A&M to never take another job again, and that hasn't changed in my mind. And that's unfair to talk about something like that. That'd be like you asking Montgomery if he's going to sign in the draft. But I understand you got to ask the question, but I gave up a big part of my life to come take this job, and I've poured every ounce of my soul in this job, and I've given this job every single ounce I can possibly give it. So write that.
Write that! And then Jim Schlossnagle, the head coach at Texas A&M, got up and he stormed off. By the way, within the last hour, Jim Schlossnagle has accepted the head coaching job at the University of Texas. So look, I don't care who won the baseball championship yesterday. I'm happy for Tennessee fans that the Vols won. They got the best coach in the country. They deserve a championship. This is a moment that UT fans can really bond over, and that's great. But now I'm happy because I thought it was so disrespectful the way Jim Schlossnagle talked to that reporter yesterday to sit there and be like, write that. Selfish of you to ask that. I know you got to do your job, but it's selfish of you, Mr. Repo Man, to take my car. I mean, it's my job. It's my job. Guy asked a question because the rumors are out there. Why are the rumors out there? Because they're true. It's almost like Jim Schlossnagle during the day watched, I don't know if you guys remember this, but when Roy Williams was the head coach at Kansas, North Carolina came open. Roy was a Dean Smith guy, and Carolina only hires Carolina guys. And Roy was playing Syracuse in the national championship. Bonnie Bernstein was the sideline reporter for CBS. And she asked Roy Williams after the game, she said, hey, I know you said you won't talk about this during the year, but now that the season's over, have you given thought to North Carolina? Well, Bonnie, I think that's, I understand as a journalist you have to answer the question, but as a person, I think it's really hard right now. Those boys just gave it their all and, blah, blah, blah. Would you take the job if you were offered it? Well, Bonnie, I know as a journalist you got to do your job, but I haven't even thought about that for 1 second, and that guy that told that to you in that earpiece, he's wrong to do that, whatever. Why? Why are they wrong to ask a question? It's not like the guy got up there and asked a question like, there are rumors that you're cheating on your wife. Is that true? Because that would be different. That's personal. Now, if it crossed over into your professional career, then it's different. But where do these $1 million coaches that sit there and complain about the transfer portal and NIL and, oh, God, we can't pay these kids all this money. Where do they get off on getting mad at the media for asking an obvious question when they're doing what they're asking them to doing? And I also wonder this. When you get paid millions of dollars to coach sports, and I understand that doing the media is a part of the job. It's not the whole job. You got to be able to sit there and develop a hitter. You got to sit there and work on his swing, and you got to do all these different things. I understand that. But shouldn't not looking like an a-hole in front of the media, in front of the fans, in front of the public, isn't that also part of the job? Like, isn't that also important? So I don't understand why this has to be so personal. Guy asks a question, and if it's a question you don't like, you get mad at the guy asking it. If Mike Vrabel, when I asked him about those Patriot comments about it's not like this everywhere. If Mike Vrabel had just said, instead of going off into that tangent word salad, and I'm a man, Jared, if Mike Vrabel had just said, no, that had nothing to do with the Titans. I love being the Titans coach, and I am proud to be the Titans coach, and it just was really more so me reflecting on how great it was in New England and the fact that there are a lot of other organizations out there that aren't like the Patriots or the Titans. Mike Vrabel would have had no problems. Zero problems when it comes to that. You wouldn't even remember that question was asked. But Vrabel can't help himself. And so when it comes to being a coach, like if I'm interviewing a coach, one thing that I do want in the coach is I want a coach that can be able to handle being asked uncomfortable questions. Now, I understand college baseball is not very popular, so Schlossnagle may never get asked hard questions. But you can't act like that and then go do it. It'd be one thing to act like that when you say, I left my family in order to come here, which, by the way, I want more info on. Like, did he leave his wife and kids in Fort Worth so he could go to A&M for the job? And, now he's got a new wife and he's going to leave her to go to Texas? I don't know. But you can't act like that and then take the job. If you're going to take the job, and he knew when he sat down right there, he knew he was going to take the job. If you're going to take the job, you should say, I'm really focused on tonight's game. That's it. I'm sorry. That's all I got for you. That's it for us, Stillman and Company. My reaction to Tennessee's victory. That's next. We'll see you tomorrow at 2, 102.5, 106 for the game.